coming to you live. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect His message. Amen. Amen. All right. Hello. Welcome. Thankful for everybody for being on. We appreciate you. All righty. Hopefully, you all are doing well. I'm thankful for another opportunity to be with you one more again. Had a bit of a rough night. However, we're excited to be able to get this word flowing and going. And we're thankful for everybody for taking time out to be with us again. Well, there's only a little bit of light. Prayerfully, it'll be enough where everybody can at least get the gist of what we're saying. You can see me somewhat in our podcast up and going, and we're going to jump into this. There we go. And we're going to talk about something that's a little challenging to the norms of society today. Grateful to be able to do so, though. And excited for everybody who's going to take time out to listen to us today. And moderators, we're thankful in advance for you guys being on and helping us through subject matters that are a little rough for some to be able to listen to. Also, too, now that we're back on YouTube, I guess we're going to have to start getting some of our moderators, making sure some people are able to moderate on YouTube as well. So we'll start looking at that. So those who are coming on regularly and we see you being faithful and coming on and saying some things and we know you're paying attention and things like that, we'll probably ask you to do some moderating. If we don't have your information already, might just contact you and ask you if you can be able to do some moderating. You're well. All right. Tav. I'm on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shalom. Well done. Executed very well. Amen. Executed very well. Hallelujah. It gets me excited when we're seeing some things move. Hello, how you doing, Brother Clem? Thanks for being on. We appreciate you. And thanks for taking time out to spend some time with us on the YouTube channel. And we appreciate you all so very much. Trying to make sure everybody on the podcast, on YouTube, on TikTok, we're grateful and thankful. Just to give a heads up, the podcast, because of how it was set up today, will probably be a little shorter. Probably won't go to full 2 hours. We will be on, but just the podcast in of itself. So just to let you guys know, give you a heads up. Those who might be listening, you can always watch the rest of it later on. User 578, you said Jamal. Okay. Hello, T. Hello, Sister Kimberly. Hello, Moto. Sister Tamika. Minister Select, Sonia, Ransom, Sister Beverly, Allen. Hey, everybody, how you doing? We're having some issues. I don't know why this is wanting to fall over for some reason. Get this set up like this. I don't know why it seems to want to fall over on us. This stand. Prayerfully, we won't have too many issues. It's supposed to rain where I am. Prayerfully, we won't have too many issues, though. And hello, I am Don. How are you doing? Appreciate you. Thanks for being on with us. And we're excited. We're grateful. We're thankful. And hello, Ms. Mack. Hello, Sister Betty. I think I met Sister Betty. I miss Sister Betty. Amen. We're thankful and grateful today. As always, we give all praise and honor to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. We give all thanks and honor to Him for each and every one of you. We're thankful and grateful to be before you one more again. And we give all honor and praise to the Most High, to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, biologist by degree, tincture of the month. Is still mucus detox. By the way, you can get many different types of tinctures that she has available to you to heal many different things, not just symptoms, but the actual sickness and disease that's going on. So, feel free to contact her and connect with her, whether you need to do through us or some other means. We're thankful and grateful, I guess, as we're starting and doing our intro, we'll put up our information just so you guys can be able to take a screenshot if you'd like to be able to get more information or try to contact us. Once again, as always, we do solicit prayer, but I asked for specific prayer. Had a little bit of a incident last night that kept us up all night. So just keep my family in prayer if you all don't mind. Continue to pray for our community, specifically for death or spirit of death, energy that's seems to be upon everybody, and is has everybody kind of in a lot of different places, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, etc. So we ask that you keep each other in prayer. And if you're on YouTube right now, or if you're on the podcast, we have all the information that you can contact us at a later date. If you would like to be able to get in contact with us as well. TikTok right now, we have it above my head, and we're thankful and grateful. Shalom, live in the fog. Uh-oh. I talked to so many people, I might have this mixed up. Live in the fog. Is live in the fog, are you the Philly brother, or are you the North Carolina brother? I'm sorry. Because we are a community. I know we're people like, hey, Big Brother Thomas, how you doing? Minister Nines, how you doing? Yeah, thank you for those who said you will. Hey, how you doing, Poppy? Anthony, how you doing? North Carolina, brother. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm gonna get it. I told you it was gonna take me a minute, but when I get him, I get him. So we're thankful, we're grateful, we're appreciative, and let's go ahead and get into the session for this rising. So once again, thank you for being on with us. We appreciate you, Patreon members. We appreciate you. We'll have some more stuff for you guys. That's just for Patreon members only later on today. Don't forget, sisters, tomorrow, right? You will have your women's meeting. Also, we'll have our weekly meeting. Prayerfully, I'll be in one place doing the weekly meeting. We might have it while I'm on the road. Either way, we will have it. And we also have our Shabbat Shalom podcast. So we're thankful and grateful for you all for being on with that. And thank you so much to everybody for being on with us. And let's go ahead and get into today. So today, specifically, what we're going to be dealing with is a pretty powerful, pretty interesting topic that maybe doesn't get discussed, or I won't even say maybe does not get discussed at all, as much as what it should. It's discussed, but it's discussed from the wrong perspective. At least it's not discussed from our cultural perspective, which some people would say, oh, you would dare say that means the wrong perspective. Well, our cultural perspective, I believe, if you listen long enough, it's going to be something that's going to bless you and help you to realize that, yeah, we're probably not, meditating on this properly. We're not probably looking at helping to be able to get past these things in the proper fashion. And so, we're going to talk about it from a different perspective. And that is that we have unnecessary boycotts. We're talking about unnecessary boycotts that are not necessary, right? Unnecessary boycotts. Now, somebody go, unnecessary boycotts? What are you talking about? Yes, unnecessary boycotts. Boycotts that are not necessary. Boycotts that you don't need to be a part of. People that are boycotting things that have nothing to do with your culture. And we want to talk about the fact, really, is a boycott necessary? Is a boycott even necessary? We want to talk about today, is a boycott even necessary? And moderators, bless you in advance, because I know we're going to be dealing with some stuff, right, coming out of this. And so bless you in advance. We're thankful and grateful for you all. And we want to once again ask the question, are boycotts even necessary? Is a boycott necessary? Unnecessary boycotts, right? So we all should know by now what a boycott is. All right. Basically, a boycott is, a march. It is us saying we're going to be against something. Matter of fact, we're always about proper definition. Yeah, unnecessary boycott equals cancel culture. That too. That's a great. We're in the same mindset, Minister Nine. Uh, let's look up the definition of a boycott. All right, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And if somebody tries to say, "Well, I googled the definition," and yada yada, okay, let's look at it as a verb and a noun. A verb is an action. A noun is a person, place, or thing. So if you're going to boycott something, if you're saying it that way, right? If I'm going to boycott something, how you doing, y'all? Y'all not tired yet? If we're going to boycott something as a verb, as an action, what we are saying is we're going to withdraw from commercial or social relations with a country, organization, or person as a punishment or protest. Y'all catch that? So if we're talking about a boycott as a verb, if I say I'm going to boycott something, what I'm saying is I'm going to withdraw from commercial, right? Commerce, finance, etc. Right? Thank you very much, Melissa, and welcome to the community. Right. So we're going to talk about a boycott. Right? A boycott is what? A boycott is a withdrawal from commercial or social relations with a country, organization, or person as what? A punishment or protest. How you doing, Sheila? Right? Once again, a boycott is what? When we withdraw from commercial or social, commercial commerce or social, how we come together as society. Okay, how you doing? Russia in the house? All right, cool. Right? So boycott is what? When we withdraw from commercial or social relations with what? A country, organization, or person. And a person, by the way, legally can even be a corporation, right? As a punishment or protest. Now, if I say I'm going to a boycott, which is a noun, all right, y'all with me? So if I say I'm going to a boycott, which is a noun, what am I saying? I'm saying that it is a punitive ban that forbids relations with certain groups, cooperation with a policy, or the handling of resources. Right? Y'all catch that? Now, some people might not understand when it says punitive, so let's make sure we get the proper definition even concerning that. Punitive means inflicting or intended as punishment. Okay? So that's so when we're saying that we're going to do, we were to read this now with that proper definition for punitive, what we're saying is that a boycott is a noun, is a person can be a boycott or a boycott, right? A thing can be used to boycott, right? So we can put something in place, or we can not buy something or get something, or a uh, or a, um, or a place. We can decide to take over a place, or we can decide to not go to a place, right? But a boycott as a noun is a punitive ban that forbids relations, right? So it's a punitive. It means something put in position to be a punishment to somebody. Did y'all catch that? To put in place to be a punishment towards somebody. When it is punitive, it is inflicting or intended. We are going to inflict, or we intend to punish somebody. We're inflicting punishment. We intend to punish somebody with this thing called a boycott. That's what we're talking about when we say we're going to boycott something. We intend to punish somebody by not doing something, whether it's not by showing up, not giving labor, not putting our finances towards something, etc. Now, the theme for today, though, is unnecessary boycotts. That seems, I know, especially with some of our Afrocentric brethren and some of our people who are marching and some of our people who are saying, we've got to march, we've got to lift up the flag, we've got to make sure we represent everybody, we've got to make sure we go to City Hall, we have to make sure that everybody is with us, we have to make sure that everybody goes against the system, we have to show the system that we're boss. They would say, we need to boycott. Why would you say a boycott would be unnecessary? Why would you say that? How you doing? Perfectly imperfect. Why would you say a boycott is unnecessary if a boycott is simply us saying we're going to withdraw from commercial or social relations with a country, organization, or person as a punishment or protest? I mean, don't you think that we should have a boycott? Don't you think we should get on TikTok and make it a point that we finish this week with we're saying that we're going to not spend money here, that we're going to go on TikTok again, and we're going to say that we're going to make sure that we just put up a bunch of stuff about Native people, and then we're going to go next week and we're going to make sure we put up a bunch of stuff about Black people, then we're going to again, we're going to just do all POC, and then we're going to go again and we're going to put up Asian stuff, and then we're going to go again and put up Black women, and then we're going to go again and we're going to put up thing about voting rights. All right. Unnecessary boycotts is what we're talking about. People say, why would you say that's unnecessary? Because we can't make change without boycotts, is the thought process. Salah. The thought process is usually what? We cannot make change without the boycott. How you doing, NBA Junior? Right? Right. And that's the deal. Is it's not changing anything. If you want true change, you don't have to present a boycott if you're living inside your culture. And I kind of had my hand over my lips, so let me say that again. If you're going to create true change, you don't need a boycott if you're already living inside your culture. Salah, right? And yes, Alchemist, thank you for that part of the definition, right? You don't, or that part of defining what we need to do moving on as well, right? Thank you for the love, Sister Sharice. You said I'm kind of confused on this one. Yeah, so we don't need a boycott if you're already living inside your culture. Okay, watch this. Do you need to not vote as a boycott if you already recognize that you're part of a community that's going to help each other and you don't need to vote? And guess what happens with many boycotts? Many boycotts go like this. And I'm not mad at the marches. I'm not mad at people said they want people to know that Black Lives Matter. I'm not mad at people for even representing the other side of that, right? I'm not mad at any of that. I'm not anti somebody wanting their position to be heard. I'm not anti a woman's march. I'm not anti, but hear what I'm saying. After the march happens, not only do we see very little, if any change, but now here's the question. If you just finished boycotting and you're going to go right back to living next door or going to work with or showing love to or being obedient to in any way, shape, or form, or giving your money right back to the same people, as soon as you get one little change, did the boycott really achieve anything? Right? I just got questions. Right? Right, all the stuff Black Lives Matter, everybody said, okay, we're going to make sure we stop spending money here. We're going to stop spending money there. We're going to stop giving to this organization. We're not going to give to this one. We're not going to show up. We're going to make sure the NFL knows that we mean boss, right? Okay. Colin Kaepernick. That everybody said, okay, cool. They're going to give Colin Kaepernick a tryout, and they had to make sure they had a settlement with him, and they did all that. But guess what? After all that, Colin Kaepernick, once he got the settlement, he's not allowed to speak about one thing they spoke about. So you don't even know what was or wasn't changed, if any change or anything was discussed. They put Jay-Z in place, and Jay-Z basically has changed what in the NFL. Matter of fact, in 2003, I believe, is when they made the Rooney Rule. That's the rule, the famous rule that says that the NFL has to allow, or has to basically, whenever they're looking for a coaching candidate, they have to allow 3 people of color outside of their organization to be interviewed before they pick who it is. And with that being said, at that time, they had 3. They said it was a problem because they only had 3 Black NFL coaches, while 75% of the NFL was Black. Right now, this year, the problem was before they hired one guy who was Black, but he doesn't even by many look Black. Now, I know people say you don't have to look Black. I get it. We come in many different packages. What I'm saying is that they made it a point to get somebody who who checked off a box, but nothing else is there, right? And they made it a point to only have, before him, there was only one Black NFL coach, right? Only one Black NFL coach hired by the very team or family who had made the Rooney Rule in the first place, which meant that anybody outside of that family wasn't even trying to hire or go by the Rooney Rule. They would go ahead and just check off a box. We got 3 people in, and that's it, right? We're talking about, you said, I feel what you're talking, power, amen, right? Like we keep boycotting things thinking that the boycott causes change. This is why some people say they're more Malcolm than Martin. And look, I love both. However, even Martin Luther King Jr. started realizing towards the end that the boycotts didn't really do much. You know how we know this? Because he said things like, I fear I have brought my people, right? I have integrated my people into a burning house. We asked, we boycotted, we protested, we sat in at lunch counters and got arrested. We watched our women get attacked and put in prison and beats, and dogs sicked on our men and women, but mostly men. We watched them get sprayed with water hoses. We watched little children get burned in churches, and we had marches about it instead of demanding justice. You know, this is why people say I'm more Malcolm than Martin, because Martin said, if after all these things we haven't seen change. And remember, Martin, even in 1965, is having interviews, right? The March on Washington's in 1963. In 1965, he's having marches and he's saying, you know what? You got, there's a white guy interviewing him and saying, hey, well, the Irish people went through things, and other people who are of other races, he's only labeled white people because he wants you to see white people were poor and white people do this and blah, blah, blah. And so why can't you guys do so, and pull yourself by your own bootstraps? And Martin Luther King Jr. says, well, it's a cruel joke to ask a man that doesn't have boots to pull himself up by his own bootstraps, right? And he says that you guys made it a point that when your ancestors came over on ships, how you doing, Sister Austria, and everybody who's coming on, shalom to you, right? He said when your ancestors came over on ships, I'm sorry, when we came over on ships, we were brought over. He said when your ancestors came over on ships, they were invited over, they were given land, they actually were paid to make sure that they were given land. They were paid to make sure that they farmed. They were given the seeds and everything. They were even paid to have somebody come and train them how to farm on the land that they were being given. How is that pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, right? But we keep boycotting, waiting for the system. At some point, they're going to let us in, right? Frederick Douglass was telling them how wild everything was, right? And at the same time, especially towards the end of his life, when he got older, he said, okay, maybe we can integrate some, even when his wife died. And his wife did die, he didn't leave her. His wife died, his black wife. But then he integrated. He even found a white wife. Even though up to his death, he was still working towards making sure that we were treated with respect. What I'm trying to tell you, though, is that the boycotting has been going on from Frederick Douglass. It's been going on since Thurgood Marshall. It's been going on since Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. And heck, even people like... I can't remember my name, the Welsh guy who was Cassius Clay, but he wasn't the Welsh guy I'm thinking of, but there's another gentleman, right? But Cassius, the original Cassius Clay, people don't know that Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, his original name, he was actually named after a white dude who would get knife fights with people when they told him, like, that's how passionate he was about ending racism. When people started saying, well, because somebody's black, they should go ahead and die, or we should kill them or do whatever, he would go around with a knife, not a gun. Hey, by the way, if somebody carrying a knife, they dedicated. It's easier to pull a trigger than it is to use a knife by any stretch of the imagination. If you don't know, you don't know. I promise you, right? It's somebody who had to be ready to go to battle. It's easy to pull the trigger, right? You got to have a different mindset to stab somebody, right? And this man walked around. We got a bird as a friend today for some reason. It is easier to pull the trigger today. I mean, it's not today. It's easy to pull the trigger in this knife fight. And he walked around stabbing folk, getting in knife fights, because people would dare say that black people were inferior just because of the color of their skin. It's been going on since the original Cassius Clay. All right, you've had people boycotting stuff since before England had their own people fight and then start calling themselves Americans and kicking out the original Americans. You had Native Americans who were boycotting. You've had Africans who were coming over in slave ships who were boycotting. Right? You've had them fight in revolutions all over the country. They call them slave rebellions. And think about that: a rebellion, to rebel. How do you rebel? You don't rebel against a slave master. You don't rebel as a prisoner of war. You fight for your freedom. You fight for the right to be able to be free. You were free before you were a prisoner of war. You didn't rebel against anything, right? But we've had sit downs. We've had people show up in Congress. We've had people show up on the steps of Congress. We've had, you've had people show up on the steps of Congress the other way, by the way, right? Hey, how you doing, China? Thanks for being with us, right? You've had all that stuff going. So it gets to a place where we have to start asking, is the boycott necessary if it hasn't met your needs? Do you need a boycott if it hasn't met your needs? If you're not getting the things out of a boycott that are necessary, then why is the boycott something that you're trained to still believe is necessary? We are having unnecessary boycotts. And what I'm here to tell you is if you would get back to your culture and you would just simply live inside your culture, you would see there would be no need to boycott. And that's what we're trying to create. We actually got some very great news as far as even YLP 83 stuff financially, where we might be able to pull some stuff, but we're still going to make sure that we're fundraising, all right, and make sure that we have stuff to be able to go off on our own. But we might have some very great things that just got up. We got to look at some legal stuff. We'll bring it up on our meeting on March 5th, which y'all pray for us, right? Where we got some really great stuff with one of the people that's there. What's on my head? What's on my head is me, right? Now, what's on your mind? What's bothering you so much that that's the only thing that you can talk about? Are you okay? Are you doing all right? You got muted. Hopefully you're doing well. Hopefully you're able to get your life together. You got blocked, so not on anymore, right? But right, is the boycott unnecessary? Right? Right? Is the boycott's just as unnecessary as that person trying to say what it is, right? And it would be just as unnecessary. You're boycotting somebody for your rights would be just as unnecessary as me trying to fight this guy in front of you guys, right? Unnecessary, especially when we're blessed with these great moderators. Thank you again for your help and being there. How you doing, Sister Beverly? How you doing, Sister Deborah? Right. So we're fighting. We're doing these boycotts. We're doing these boycotts, right? And while doing these boycotts, we're putting ourselves in an unnecessary position where if you would just honor your culture. Now, I brought this up before. I bring this up multiple times. I'm going to bring it up again. If we realize, well, I won't go that far. Well, I thank you, Sister Sheba. I won't go that far that he's unnecessary, but his point of view right now is definitely unnecessary for sure. If we were to bring this up, though, let me bring this up again. If you go to Washington, D.C., I'm not a native of Washington, D.C., but I bring it up because my family, my father is a Washingtonian, even though they out of, by way of Carolina. Many people have gone through D.C. I've lived most of my life, I believe, in D.C. Or the DMV area. If you do the DMV area, then it stretches even further. And I can tell you that there's this place when you go there, if you haven't visited, when you go downtown DC, if you get a chance, make sure that you don't just go to the National Mall, right? Which is where you're going to find all the museums, free museums, stuff like that, where you're going to find the George Washington Monument, right? The phallus, the obelisk, and then you're going to the Father God thing, and then you're going to see the Capitol building on the other side, and you'll see on the top of it, you'll see the goddess Columbia. That's why you have Washington, D.C., Washington District of the goddess of Columbia, both of them coming together. If you, and when you go there, if you get a chance, I want you, because there's on one side of it, you would call that like Southwest. On the other side, you would call it Northwest. If you go towards the Northwest side, you'll be able to know you're going in the correct direction, because if you're on 7th Street going up the Northwest direction, you'll pass a Starbucks, and then on your left-hand side, you're going to pass a Archives. It's called Archives National Memorial, something like that. At least it was. I haven't been there in a little bit. I'm pretty sure it still looks the same. And then you're going to get to a place where you're going to see where the Washington Wizards and the Capitals play, right? And with the movie theater, some other stuff right there. And then you keep going straight, and you're going to see a big sign right there at 7th and H. And on 7th and H, you look up, and it's got Chinese writing, because you're right in the middle, basically, of Chinatown, kind of, sort of. But you're in Chinatown. Now, in that area, right? Now, here's Chinatown. And if you just walk down the street, you're at the Congress building. I'm going to say that again. Here's Chinatown. You see a big, huge mark right there, sign. That's designed, right? Yeah, famous 7th and 8th Street. They got a metro station right there. So when you come right out the metro station, one of the exits you come out of, you'll actually come right out, and it'll be one of the first things you're going to see. And And you see this is like a Starbucks right there too. Starbucks in cities be everywhere, right? So there's like a Starbucks there. There's a big old sign. There's like at least there was like a Five Guys something there. There's all this, right? You see the MLK Library is not too far from there. You got the National Portrait Gallery is right there. There's a lot of stuff, but you'll see this big sign and all this stuff right in the middle of Washington D.C. There's Chinatown. Now, why do I say that? Not because I'm anti-China. All right, so let me remove that from anybody's mindset before we even go there. It has nothing to do with being anti-China, right? The reason why I'm saying that is because I want you to know that China is not concerned, or the Chinese community there is not really concerned exactly about voting because they have power. That big sign right there lets you know that they have power. You're in the middle of their city. You think it's Washington, D.C. you're in, but the reality is you're in the middle of China. Chinatown. Why? Because they brought their culture. You don't see Chinese boycotts in Washington, D.C. You see a lot of black boycotts. You've seen the Million Man March. You've seen the Women's March right after Trump got voted in. You saw people march down from the White House, pass kind of sort of through or right around where I'm talking about to be able to get to the Congress building January 6th last year. You've seen those things, but you've never seen a Chinese protest in Washington, D.C. Right now, I haven't lived in Washington, D.C. as long as some of you have, or I don't have the experience of Washington, D.C. as long as some might have. But if anybody can tell me the last time they saw a Chinese protest at Washington, D.C., you let me know. And the reason why is because they live in their culture. They made sure that they bought things up and sold it. Even when they sold it, they gave it one to another. Matter of fact, I would dare say if you were to go, I'm not talking about a parade. I'm not talking about a Chinese New Year celebration. I'm talking about an actual boycott or an actual march. When's the last time you saw that? You haven't seen it because they live inside their culture. You said nothing's changed, Brother Clem. I'm sorry. I'm just saying that. Sorry about the late response, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is their culture protects them. Their culture says we will build things that are Chinese. Matter of fact, it's so culturally appropriate there that if you are Starbucks there, guess what you have to do if you're Starbucks? You have to write Starbucks in English so that we know what it is, but then you have to write in Chinese characters, Starbucks, or whatever it is they want you to put up underneath that to let people know it's Starbucks in Chinese, because their culture is king. You don't have to vote. You don't have to fight for a vote. You don't have to do any of that because your culture is king. If you were to go to the same stadium I'm talking, or the basketball stadium right there, where I don't even know, it used to be what, MCI Center, the Verizon Center, is it still Verizon Center? I'm not even sure. But if you want to watch, I forget his name right now, the one that used to play with John Wall. I don't pay enough attention anymore. Forgive me. He making a bunch of money. He's supposed to be making like going up to 50 million a year or something, but he makes like 35 million a year. Whatever the guy's name is that's there now is supposed to be their star. If you want to go watch them play, if you want to watch the Hoyas when they go play, and that center, guess what you got to do? You got to still look at Chinese characters. If you want to go, there's a Thai restaurant, at least there was, that was inside on the second floor. If you wanted to go up there, you had to look at Chinese characters. There used to be a Bed Bath and Beyond down there. You would go on this long, long escalator down to the basement, like down, underground, and there was a Bed Bath and Beyond down there. If you wanted to go shop there, guess what you had to do? You had to go underneath Chinese characters. They were making it a point to let you know that you're in China's town. You're in Chinatown. This is ours, right? If you go to some of the, they have a Jewish synagogue over there, and they still have Chinese characters around there. That's powerful if you know about how stuff works and powerful people in Washington, D.C. They said, we don't care who you are, right? They've got tons of Chinese restaurants, corner stores, Chinese owned. I'm not saying this because I'm anti-China. I'm trying to get you to comprehend that wherever you go over there, you must deal with their culture. They don't need to boycott. If a mayor gets in, I don't care if it's Bowser now, right? Or before that, if it was Gray, or before that, if it was Fenty, or if you want to go all the way back to when it was Marion Barry, or you want to go back before then, every time you had to deal, whoever came in there, you had to deal with Chinatown. You had to deal with China. And they were going to tell you that if you're going to have an okay time in your office here, You better be ready to make sure that you meet our demands. If not, we will make things tough for you. And by the way, they have those same Chinese symbols if you keep on going up the street. I can't remember the name of the restaurants over there. They restaurants kind of come and go in certain places, but even some of the restaurants a few blocks up, keep on going down 7th Street, right? Go down 12th Street, 14th Street, go a certain place. You're gonna still see Chinese characters. You got to pay homage, and they're going to make you pay more money than they would make a Chinese person pay, because they don't mind giving breaks to their culture. But if you're going to try and bring something else that could be a threat to their culture, okay, we'll work with you. But since you're a threat to us, we're not going to let a threat come in and not be paid for taking on a threat. And people will say, oh, but if we as Black people start saying, be about your culture, make sure that you get your worth, make sure that you spend money with yourselves, have a community that you can live with one another, make sure that it's all right to take care of yourselves as a diaspora, people immediately have something to say. If I've seen it so many times. The reason it needs to say Black owned is because they would like for Black people to support them, since maybe you don't eat what we eat. Or they would like for Black people to come and support them because, hey, maybe it's about time that we started supporting our own businesses. I mean, we've been going to Walmart. You don't have a problem when we make Walmart rich, the Wall family or whatever they call it, right? You don't have a problem with that, with Sam and his family and his people being okay and taking advantage of us at the same time, right? You've been fine, right? And the reason they have to put Black owned is because you don't need to put white owned on Walmart. You don't need to put white owned on Amazon. You don't need to put white owned on the Piggly Wiggly. You don't need to put white owned on because we know it is. They put Black, right? But you can have a Chinese restaurant, you can put Chinese characters on it. You can have an Italian restaurant and make sure that the whole menu and everything is written in Italian. Why? Because it's your culture. But the second you say, I'm going to put something Afrocentric on mine, the second you say, I'm going to put a Black face on Israel again, we put a white face on it and they walking around in blackface telling you that they're you. The second you say, I'm going to do it for my people, it's a problem. I was like, hey, Shalom, Sister Tanya, what was saying? Opinion on if King would have took X's approach. Well, I mean, they're human beings. Everybody takes a different approach. Like, I don't think X took Garvey's approach, even though even though Garvey really informed, Shabazz or Malcolm Little or Malcolm X's father. And he definitely informed people like Bob Marley. He informed people like even Elijah Muhammad to a certain extent. So obviously, he was, but he's not the same. But as far as King initially didn't even believe in nonviolence. He wanted to go ahead and just be over the place. But if he was going to be over that Baptist convention, he had to go by the rules and regulations. So he followed the bylaws. However, King did eventually start trying to go nonviolent when he saw that it was something that he thought could be used. But when he started realizing that, hey, us being in violence all day isn't really changing much, he kind of said, all right, well, I came to my senses, son. That Black owned has to make prices higher to survive, it seems. So that's how some areas are here. There are Latin communities like they never have to go outside. Yeah. I mean, and by the way, nothing wrong with that. If you see a Thai community, more power to you. You see an Indian community, more power to you. Like, you see a Roman Catholic community, no, more power to you. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to colonize. You're supposed to gentrify. We've been taught that gentrification is bad. So we'll boycott and then go right back into the gentrified areas. Meanwhile, instead of boycotting, gentrify. So Minister Select Song said we went to 7th Street every weekend as a child. I always wondered about what you're teaching. Thank you. Yeah, it's right there in your face. I mean, shoot, it's Chinatown in New York, Chinatown in Chi-Town, any big city just about. They made it a point to say, we're going to colonize big cities. Anywhere our people want to go, big city-wise, they can go over there, and we have a place for them to go. And what do they make sure that they do? They say, you're going to get educated. Now, here's something else, because they don't need the boycott. Why don't they need the boycott? They say, we're going to send you to school, but we're going to send you to school, and what's your calling? Yeah, point is culture, right? Oh, no problem, Sister Betty. You're good. Y'all don't have to apologize for having to come in and out of the lives and stuff. Thank you, though, but y'all don't have to do all that. How you doing, Dennis? Right? You said just the fact that they are allowed to thrive in that high profile space speaks volumes, right? Yeah. So even here in Dallas, right? Dallas, I'm pretty sure there's one in H-Town. We didn't go to it when we were there last, but I'm pretty sure there's one in H-Town. Um, I know there's one in Chicago. I've been to that one. I know there's one in New York. I've been to that one. I know there's one in Philly. I've been to that one. I don't know if it's as big as some of the others, but I know there's one. You know, Philly, I might be off on. Maybe it's in and around Philly. I'm not sure, but I know there's one. Yeah, they're all over the DMV. I mean, technically, there's a Chinatown in Alexandria, right? There's a Chinatown in DC. Is there a Chinatown in Baltimore? Maybe Baltimore County, not Baltimore City. Actually, no, there are places you would say like, yeah, that's a Chinatown, even in Baltimore. There's a Chinatown in Atlanta. There's a Chinatown. You keep all going, right? There's a Chinatown in. Is there a Chinatown in St. Louis? I'm not sure about St. Louis. There's a Chinatown in Indianapolis, I think. Right? They're making the point to bring their culture, and that's what it's all about. Your culture has it where you don't need to. Yeah, we need to colonize it. By the way, we need to colonize, but we're not trying to colonize it. But we're just trying to say, hey, we need to have something that's our own. Everybody else is okay with doing that. However, for whatever reason, when we say we want to do it, right, it's about our culture. You said, right, Chinese boycott. I don't believe I've ever seen one in America. Yeah, you don't need one. Matter of fact, Chinese people, for the first time, as far as my recollection, I'm not saying I'm the only. My recollection is the only one that counts. And thanks for the agreement, Barbara. And how you doing, Sister Rhonda? Um, I'm just saying, for the first time in my recollection, the first time I believe that the Asian community came out and said, "Stop Asian hate." Which, by the way, Asian is a bunch of stuff, including us, right? Nevertheless, though, stop Asian hate. They put out an Asian hate crime bill, right? They don't even boycott. What they said was, we can't boycott. We don't even have the numbers to boycott. How about y'all boycott for us? And we said, yeah, that sure seems fine. Yes, sir, boss. We went to another boss. We went from we went from the white man to the Chinese man, Chinese man, Japanese man, etc. And a lot of people don't even know they come from us anyways. They're supposed to be our family. Yeah, when we do try to say those things, we're a threat, right? Because they live in the neighborhood, but you never see them until it's time for them to go to their vehicles. You said no, not in Indy. Okay, there's one in Houston. All right. Yeah, so it's like, you have to be ready for that. You said we can't even gather at a car wash or anywhere without police supervision, right? They said we're going to make sure we watch over you, but the goal is to stop. Because you even think about that. Thank you, Sister Shima, for even saying that. Why are we, even in our even when we have our boycotts, we have to make sure somebody else approves the boycott. I mean, that should say something to us right there. We can't boycott without somebody approving it. That's an overseer, y'all. That's why that word overseer is dangerous. I know y'all have overseers that you've gone to and asked questions to and asked to pray over you and stuff like that. But overseer is a dangerous place. Don't forget overseers. Do not forget overseers. Are those big chairs and everything? They were people that during services, when people were having, not only that, but obviously they were whipping people and they were making sure that they caught people. They were part of slave patrols and all that stuff. But overseers, they were the people that worked for the white slave owners. And they would even come into your services. They would allow you to have church services. Say, hear what I'm telling you again. They would allow you to have church services. And then you would go there and they would make sure they showed up so that you couldn't really boycott anyways. They weren't going to have you preaching, talking about the kingdom of heaven belongs to you and that you have as much right as anybody, no matter what the color of your skin is. That was not the plan. So the preacher that they allowed to preach the word, who usually had to have that Sambo spirit, he'd get up there and he'd preach their word. And once he finished preaching their word, then what was the next step? After he finished preaching their word, what was the next step? Oh, okay, well, let me come up behind and clean up some stuff that he said. And everybody would say amen. The racist rhetoric would be raising in a cascade of amens. We agree. Might as well say Ashe or whatever else it is that you want and attach yourself to it, right? That's what they were doing. You said knowing and respecting our culture will help. Yeah. You said bill passed so fast that people forgot the bill. Yeah, because nothing really needed to change. They didn't even need the bill. That's why you don't even remember it. You don't even remember it. Like, that just happened last year. Don't even remember it. Oh, thank you for the blessings. Tadach, Tadach, Tadach. Sorry. I was trying to say Baba Kasha. I keep saying you're welcome for some reason. But yeah, thank you for being on. Appreciate it. Untamed. Right? Yeah, overseers never see church the same again. I'm just saying, these are things that were there. Shalom, shalom to you. Thank you. Hello, Sister Barbara. How you doing? How you doing, Fancy? You know, these are things that are there. Like, so if you can't even have a protest or a boycott without somebody else having to either, watch this, approve your boycott the whole time or make sure they protect you during your boycott, then you might as well not boycott. I mean, I want you to understand that if somebody else can have a boycott, right? If somebody else can march in white sheets, if somebody else can march with tiki torches, if somebody else can take on the National Mall, and people say no matter what they say, no matter how horrendous or how horrible or how horrifying it is, right? And they can have these marches, but you have to be protected when you have yours, right? Something's wrong. Matter of fact, you got to pay for protection. A lot of times they'll just show up. I told you guys, you can look up on YouTube or just look up on Google or just do your research, right? Don't believe me, research this stuff and don't look for one source, look for multiple sources where you will see that they had Nazi rallies in Madison Square Garden. Don't just do that. That's New York City. Don't forget they had them in Georgia. Don't forget they had them in Florida. Don't forget that they had them in Cali. Don't forget they had them all over the place. But you can find on video Nazi rallies that were going on while they were talking about we need to fight the Axis powers, right? They called themselves the whatever powers, the heroes. And they said those are the evil people, those Axis powers or whatever. And meanwhile, though, JFK's daddy, Jack, is supporting Hitler. And meanwhile, what's his name from England? Winston Churchill, is over there trying to figure out how he can have stuff with Hitler and stuff with Stalin at the same time. You know, and Stalin actually was with Hitler. That's why Hitler started going into Poland and stuff, because him and Stalin and Hitler actually said, we're going to be boys on this. We're going to work together. And we're going to go ahead and sign a treaty that says that you can go ahead and go in that land and we got your back. And he actually, when everybody came out against Germany, when he did it publicly, he came out publicly. Stalin did and said, hey, why are you guys talking bad about him? He's not doing anything wrong. He said, we'll defend him. We'll defend his right to be able to take over that country. Oh, yeah, you said the white gloves as well? Yeah, the white gloves as well, right? A lot of people don't know. There's a culture behind everything. There's a reason behind everything. And so you got to figure out why your culture is not there. There's no reason. See, watch this. Without culture, there's no reason. And without no reason, there's no reasoning. Oh, that's bars right there. We never even said that one before. Hallelujah. Right? Without culture, thank you, Holy Spirit. Without culture, there's no reason. Without reason, there's no reasoning. You said, love this, no need to boycott if you're living your culture. Yeah. You said OTW on, I'm sorry. OTW, you've been researching this lately because of you. Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, do your research, you know. Jacques said, same thing pastors do at church when someone under them preach, they'll come after it to adjust the doctrine, right? Because that's where that comes from. They have an overseer spirit. They're bringing that overseer spirit. It's a curse, a generational curse, where I got to come behind you and up. You were speaking a little too much outside of what I want you to do. You might be speaking too much culture. Let me come back and clean that up a little bit. Now, sometimes it might be necessary because you might have somebody that preaches some stuff that's off, right? You know, and it rarely happens with me, but there might be a time where I come behind somebody and I mention something. You know, now y'all will be listening every time we have these things. We have other people speak to see what I say after, you know, but I don't do it that often. It's very rare. But every once in a while, somebody might come behind you and say or do some stuff, and you might have to be like, yeah, no, that was trash. Because you got to protect those who are part of your culture. You got to make sure that we say that our cultures come up first. Yeah, where did it go? Exactly. We just talked about that not too long ago. Right. So because you have no culture, you don't have the reason. Because you don't have the reason, you have no reasoning. Well, so now because you have no reasoning, the only thing you say is, I'm going to try to change. I'm going to try to reason with them, but you're reasoning with them from within their culture. Right. If the wolf is attacking the sheep, why would the sheep try to reason with the wolf? The sheep turns to the shepherd to be protected. or at least if they're out in their culture, right, in their civilization, we would call it the wild, but in their culture, the ram would show up to protect. You know, I was talking to somebody. I'm not gonna say who their name is, but we were having a conversation yesterday. But yeah, yesterday, and we were talking, and they said something, and I said, I don't know. I said this got to be Holy Spirit is saying this, but I was like, sheep's clothing looks good on everybody. And we laughed, right? We had a little chuckle out of that, right? You know, it's real talk though. Like, everybody looks great in sheep's clothing, whether you're a wolf or you're a sheep. One of the things that helps you to be able to see the wolf from the sheep is the culture, right? The Antichrist spirit, the second beast, he has the sheep's horns. He speaks like the beast. His culture's off. He looks just like he can look just like you. Can change himself into a messenger of light because his master can do so. You said you repent for encouraging boycotting. Amen. Yeah. And you don't even have to, yeah. We repent. We just turn from it. He said it's not looked on respectfully to come and preach behind the minister. It's not looked on respectfully, but it happens all the time. And who's gonna stop it? Right? If the pastor decides he's gonna get up and he's gonna speak, he can speak 2 minutes, 3 minutes, even in that 1 minute, even when they're saying we thank God for the preacher coming up and he spoke on blah blah and he spoke on this and he spoke on that. They might only take 2 minutes, but they're cleaning it up. That's what they're doing. That's what you're trained to do. I'm telling you, somebody who used to think that was the way I was going. That's what you're trained to do. You got to come up behind the person, right? Unless the person outranks you, then you really can't say anything except amens. And just be thankful and grateful even that they taught the wrong thing. So you got to protect your culture. And when you boycott, what you're saying is, I'm going to stop doing what I need to do. I'm going to sit in your place. I'm going to stop what my family needs to do to move. And what I'm hoping is if I sit there long enough, you'll start saying, I need to move. We're talking about unnecessary boycotts, Sister Christine. Right? You said the pastor going to speak on it, their house. Yeah. Right. Like that's so what we're trying to get is in a position to where we know we realize, right? Yeah, that pecking order, right? So we're trying to get to a place where we recognize and realize and think in the right manner. Right? We've got to come out of this mindset that says that if we keep boycotting, change will come. That whole if you build it, they will come. Well, if you build it, how you gonna build it if you boycott? Right? Look, man, I'm not saying that I don't even I'm not mad. Thanks for the love, appreciate it. I'm not mad at people who marched and supposedly marched peacefully, right? However, it's very frustrating, it's very dishonorable, it's very insulting when I watch videos. Oh, sorry. It's very insulting when I watch videos and I have to see that there were little babies and women who had dogs sicked on them. And we were taught that we were supposed to let that happen. We were taught to have them go out and do that. And that was going to cause change. We were taught that if we go out there, really that's what the thought process was, right? The thought process was, look, we don't really have power. The media is powerful. If we go out and we are civil and they show that they are uncivil, then things will change. And the reality is that you got to look at the word civil correctly. I'm sorry, you said, are you on YouTube? Need to study this stuff you say. I'll be at work missing this when we're live. Yeah, we're on YouTube. Just look up hashtag find the Kofi, hashtag FINDKOFI. As a matter of fact, now we're live on YouTube. So basically it doesn't take that long, at least for the rising sessions, it doesn't take that long for it to be uploaded. The sessions we do on we do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern New York time. Those sessions are not live on YouTube or live anywhere else except TikTok, but we make sure we upload those. But every rising session, every rising at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time, we come on TikTok, on YouTube, on the podcast, on Facebook, sometimes on IG, and we try to make sure that those are loaded up in other places as well. Also, we make it a point to put that on, but when we do a live on YouTube, it automatically loads up as soon as we're finished. So if you give it like an hour max after we finish a live, So like definitely by like 12 noon Eastern New York time, we'll be on there live, right? And also there's stuff on Patreon that you can watch. And sometimes we put a little bit of the stuff we're doing here on Patreon, but Patreon will try to give you at least bare minimum 5 minutes a day of stuff you don't get anywhere else. And we actually do 1 week session. Once a week, we do a session on there that's just for the Patreon family as well. Belly said, history in America resents Malcolm X because he met force with force. He was never wrong. Yeah. And even, by the way, look at a lot of stuff that we're talking about. We kind of even overextend that. We on both sides. On the right side, if you will, I mean, we shouldn't have a right or lean left or right. We should be central, right? Because we should be holistic. Holy means to be whole, right? But on the right, it's exaggerated that all he did was fight, and on the black side, it's he fought against the system. All he did was fought against the system. Um, he would tell you when it was a waste of time to fight, right? He would tell you sometimes it was a waste of time to fight. It wasn't his goal to always fight. It was his goal to make sure that people have what they needed. I'm not saying that he wasn't going to go before, the UN and all these different things. I'm not saying that. If you look at his history, though, you'll see that he wasn't always out there fighting. He was speaking a lot, and that was his way of fighting, right? But he wasn't out there with guns and stuff like that. Matter of fact, he said we had to get ourselves together. But if you mess with his people, especially when he stepped away from the nation, he said, if you mess with our people, I'm coming for you. When he was in the nation, he wasn't even allowed to speak like that. That's one of the reasons. That was the beginning, even though really there was already stuff going on behind the scenes where people were playing him against Elijah Muhammad, and they were actually doing that with the help of the CIA and stuff as well. But they were doing that within their own ranks because people were jealous and stuff. But the reality is that, um, you know, he, as part of the nation, never, they were trained to never go out and harm people in the streets, to never fight against the police unless they were provoked, to always stand their ground, to make sure that they were mindful of the law, right? They never did those things, right? But they kept on building up their own. They kept making sure they had their own stuff for their own people. Now, were they as successful as maybe some people in history want us to believe? No, not really. However, credit where credit's due, right? They were about what? Given even when they talked to the government, they used to say what? They used to say that their version of Allah, because remember, their version of Allah is not the same Allah that is considered to be Allah the Merciful under other, what we would call traditional Muslim law, right? They believe Allah to be a man. Nevertheless, right? They they said Allah is, they would say that if America doesn't give the black man land for himself, right, and completely allow the black man to separate. Now, I don't believe that we have to have complete separation. I do believe we should have our own land, though. I'm not saying we should never interact with white people ever again, but we need to be able to have our own land and have like-minded people live there together, just like everybody else has the right to. The only time you see anybody talking about that as being a bad thing is when you see black people do it. Go to where I went to high school, Alexandria, Virginia, and you tell me if it's integrated. See, that's the trick that they use. It's integrated. See, you got the token. See, there's 2-3 black people in this neighborhood. Or see, there's a little black strip right there where that whole block is black people. That's not integration anyways. Because you're going to talk true integration, you got to integrate cultures. But how do you integrate cultures? You see how that works? They're tricking you. Yeah, because of fear. We definitely need sovereignty. We need to make sure that we keep up on it. That's why we talk about it so much, right? But that's the trick. Jacques said, growing up as a Christian, I thought X was wrong and MLK was a good guy. And by the way, they were both great for what they did, right? They both had faults, I would say. They both should have came together. They both were trying to come together to basically the weekend or something like that, or the week before X got shot. X was actually tried to come down and visit Martin. Martin was locked up. So he talked to Martin's people. They were talking about coming together finally, and stuff was going to look a lot different than what you thought, right? What we were used to seeing. And so guess what? They had to speed it up. They had to get Malcolm out of there. And then eventually Martin started talking like Malcolm more and more and started saying how it was a travesty. He realized, man, if they'll gun him down for leaving the nation, That's why he got gunned down. They allowed him to get gunned down. Sure, the nation had their hand on it, but the CIA let it happen. They knew it was going to happen. The FBI knew it was going to happen. The government knew it was going to happen, and they helped it along. Some people would even say they didn't trust. They didn't even trust. There's a lot of theories out there, but there are some people that would even say the CIA didn't trust them. So when you look at it, there were holes in the ceiling, meaning that they didn't even trust, even though they were going to be the Nation of Islam was going to be shooting at Malcolm point blank range, point blank range. They still didn't trust these black people to be able to make sure they kill one of their own. So they shot at them simultaneously as they were shooting at them up on the stage. They were shooting at them down from the second floor. And we know for a fact that the CIA had actually bought the room above where Malcolm X was right before right before the night before they were getting ready to have their thing that day, which means that Malcolm X walked into a trap from the top and the bottom. His bodyguard cries to this day because he told Malcolm he didn't even feel comfortable with him being up there, wanted to be up there with him, didn't really want him to even do the speech. He said, "Man, we might as well call this off." He had a bad feeling about it. What is his name? Our brother died in his 90s. Gregory. Is it Gregory? Oh wow. I see his face. Comedian. Just died maybe what 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe. I don't know this. What is his name? It escapes me. He's been around forever. I can't remember his name. You said they got this all girl hair conditioner for split ends. Okay. I guess thank you for helping us to be better as a people. You're welcome to stay in here if you have something relative to say, though. I mean, that has or relevant. Relative would be nice as well, but if you at least got something relevant, you could speak on that. You know, I'm less concerned about my split ends, and you being more concerned about my split ends. I'm less concerned about that than our people being split and people not being able to work together. That's more so what I'm worried about. But if my split ends bother you that bad, I mean, hey, go somewhere else. Um, Dick Gregory, right? Dick Gregory, thank you. And Dick Gregory was talking about how he had a conversation with Malcolm X. Malcolm X had invited him to come to the event that he was putting on, that he was going to speak at, or to meet him. Basically, I know he was going to come to that service because basically it was like a Muslim service, but he had invited him to come and meet with them. Gregory told him, I'm sorry, Dick Gregory told him that he said, "I'm not coming." He said, "I had a dream about this and this and that or whatever." And he said, he said, "I know the heat is on and all this." He said, "Man, when we finish," he said, he said, "if I come see you, I'm going to see you die." He said, "And I'm not coming to watch you die." Like, it was known that this was going on, right? It was known that was going on. They knew that was going to happen. He told him, he said, "I can't come see you, bro." He said, "I love you. How you doing, Tease?" He said, "I love you." He said, "I love you, bro, but I can't come and watch you die. I refuse to watch you die." And people act like this stuff wasn't known and nobody knew. And he was killed because he was coming to culture. Don't right? He started talking about the Nation of Islam, and he started giving out game and secrets and stuff. And he started people think only that he came out about, go listen to some of the stuff that he talked about specifically about Elijah Muhammad after he left and the nation. He started talking about the fact that, hey, the nation keeps telling you they're about culture, but they're not taking care of their people. He started saying, hey, the nation keeps telling you they're about husbands and wives, but Elijah Muhammad has all these little girls out here that he's had, underage girls that he's had sex with. As soon as they get pregnant, he makes them his secretary. As soon as they get pregnant, they disappear. You can't find them anymore. And they barely take care of them. They just barely give him enough to survive, right? While he's sitting up there telling you that he has one wife, right? He, like Malcolm said, and I'm not trying to cause dissension in the ring. I'm just trying to tell you, like, Malcolm got killed because he started telling you about culture. He started saying, "Yo, I went to Mecca, where they said that nobody else can come there, and he's unless they're," or he said that the nation is accepted in Mecca, but he said, they wouldn't accept him in Mecca because in Mecca they don't believe that we worship Allah. Right? He started giving game. He started talking about like something is culturally off. Right? He started talking about how the Nation of Islam and the KKK were having meetings behind the scenes and shaking hands and getting money from the same people. That was when all of a sudden he had to go, right? He had to go because he was talking about culture. See, we don't know those things. We don't think about those things. That's why he was killed. CIA helped to kill him, sure. By the way, we know about that CIA stuff too. You can go on YouTube and listen to a meeting he had with the CIA where they told Malcolm straight up, like, you can go listen to this interview. Not an interview, but when they arrested him, they brought him in. They said, look, man, we won't kill you. No nation wants to kill you. You know, if you just go ahead and give us information on them, then we won't let them kill you. We'll protect you. And he said, I will never, he said, even if you kill me here, he said, I will never betray I will never betray those brothers. Even though I know they wish to kill me, I would never betray them. Because his culture said I can't even go against my own brothers like that. You said, yep, read the autobiography. It goes into detail about how and why the nation did what they did. Yeah. You said you never knew. A lot of people don't know, right? Well, what I'm trying to tell you, getting back to this, is because I'm not trying to hyper focus on that. I want you to comprehend, though, when we're talking about culture, you got to comprehend, you have to have a place. See, Malcolm was trying to bring culture, but Malcolm wasn't bringing us together in a physical location or making sure that we were doing those things. He wasn't making sure that, hey, only buy at black businesses or only buy, if you want to call it Israelite or whatever, right? He didn't have the land or stuff to come together. Martin Luther King Jr., with his whole thing was, hey, let's go ahead and make sure that we get with these people and just only have that, right? You can have people coming to your land, but if they come into your land, they got to respect your land. Every time you go into somebody else's house, you got to respect their house. We are only able to go into somebody else's house. We have no house. Yeah, there it is, right? Yeah, they feel safe enough to show it on YouTube now. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because what you gonna do about it? So we know the CIA kills black folk like that. Like, they put it out there. What you gonna do about it? Because you don't have a house. You still got to stay here. And they got you so anti your culture that you wouldn't even think, you know, of course you can always go to Africa, but you wouldn't even think, well, I could just make sure that we come together in here, you know. And I'm not saying we're doing this is not the way we're coming across our land, but do you not know, like, there are people who have asked us to partner with them who literally have liquefied, like, groups of people who just, everybody sold everything they had. They came together, they got land. And even though they're just starting or whatever, they have land. They know they got land, at least bare minimum. They got a couple places to be able to turn into homes and stuff like that. Like, you know, a couple of huge 18-wheeler things or whatever. They're fixing those up to be little homes the family can stay in and stuff like that or whatever. They at least have a start, right? I've said this before. Can I speak in my little Malcolm X stuff and my little Malcolm X voice? Right? I tell you again, I say again, you've been had, right? You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, right? You know, like that's what's happened, is that we believe that you think that you live in your own home. You think that when somebody says America, you think where you live, or you must say not where you live. When somebody says America, you think your house. When somebody says America, you think your country. But it's shipping containers, not the one I'm talking about, but shipping containers, right? Is something we're looking at doing for ourselves. But you know, that's but you think in your house. When they say vote, you vote because you think you're voting for your candidate. When they say feminism, you think they're talking about your woman. And so you got black men talking about, I'm a feminist. White women don't want security. Not all white women. Feminists are not looking for security for black people. They're looking for security for white women. They're not even looking for security. They're looking to have the same opportunities to do to everybody else what white men do to everybody else. And I know because I've worked under plenty of feminists. I know because I know who Margaret Sanger is. I know because I actually know the real deal about who Susan B. Anthony is. And Susan B. Anthony told you over and over again that she ain't fighting for black rights. She told you over and over again that it's not her fight. She told you over and over again that she would rather cut off her arm than fight for your rights, which means, and by the way, she told you over and over again that you were a beast. Yet, when it comes to whatever Women's Appreciation Week or Women's Day or Women's Month or whatever, who are black women going to raise up and say, this helped us as we as women? She's somebody we look up to. They're going to say Susan B. Anthony. Is that Mark A1? They once said I watched your Hawaii video buying out the natives. Yeah, why you in real estate? Yeah, we have to look at land, not even property. Property is legally something you don't want. You want land. Look that up on your own time. I'm not going to explain that today. But you don't even want property. You want land. Yeah, very evil, Miss Matt. Very evil. And sorry for missing the comment, right? Thank you, son. Yeah, it was Dick Gregory. So lesser two evils is still evil. This is not our system, right? Praise Jehovah for renewed covenant. We're still out here fighting for somebody else's what? For somebody else's right, for somebody else's land. We're trying to say that if we get this, if we vote this person in, then maybe they'll finally start giving us a peace. That's what we keep saying, that we were told the American dream and we want the American dream. But even Malcolm said, they kept telling us about the American dream, but all we've experienced is the American nightmare. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us, right? You got to stop worrying about boycotting, because boycotting is you saying, "Hey, I want a piece of what you have." They don't have to give it to you. I'm not saying it wouldn't be right for them to give it to you. I'm not saying that I don't believe reparations is something you don't deserve. But here, look, if you're talking about reparations that you were supposed to get from technically 1862, but really, if you want to talk about 1864, 1865, then it's now 2022 and people still waiting on reparations. And Joe Biden told you that he was going to work on it when him and Kamala, who was locking us up and married to a white man. I'm not saying that you can't have interracial marriage, but let's just keep it 100, right? She was married to a white man, locking up black people, while telling you Wakanda forever when it looked like it could get her some votes. And then all of a sudden told you how racist Joe Biden was, left the scene when Joe Biden's girl messed up and the George Floyd thing showed how bad she messed up. Then all of a sudden they said, let's get Kamala in. Now all of a sudden Kamala said, we're going to get y'all reparations. You got to get to a place where you understand, like, she's playing on your boycott. All they do, like, you think you're using the boycott to get something that they have. All they do, they look at your boycott, they say, okay, how much stuff can we give them just a little bit of? Remember, this is what democracy is. By the way, the word democracy doesn't even show up in the Constitution. It doesn't show up in state constitutions either. Right? But let's just look at this word democracy, demo and cressy. Cressy means govern. So we got that part. Cressy, how they govern you. Demo is what? A little bit, a few people who live together. So a few people that live together, right, in a village, a small village, because demo can also mean small village. So a few people who live together give you a little bit and they govern you by it. So you march and march and march. And you say, we want this, we want that, we boycott this, right? So a company that's still getting your money, by the way, they say, ooh, these people seem to be serious about it. What should we do? I know what we'll do. We'll go ahead and say, we'll come out and say, hey, we're sorry. We'll write an apology. And people say, I like that apology. It's so great that that company apologized. It's so great that they said they're going to change one policy, right? One part of their policy. Man, you know what? That's great. Let's go shopping there again. Matter of fact, let's go out to everybody and put on social media how great it is that there's one little piece of policy, right? Propaganda. Let's go out and put out they don't even have to put out their own propaganda. They will change one little tiny thing and we'll do the propaganda piece for them and scream hallelujah, right? While we do it. Because change is coming if they finally gave us one little thing. That's democracy. Right? They're giving you, that's why you live in a democratic republic. Because if you put democracy with republic just means kingdom. Thanks for the agreement, Deborah. Beverly said there's a doc on Netflix about the Islam conditions in their camps. Okay, I was not aware of that. I don't know if I'll be able to watch it. I'll try to, though. Sounds interesting. You said we need to start trusting each other. It seems like one always wants one more than the other. Yeah. And by the way, we want to one up each other too, even in ourselves, right? We're so busy not looking at the fact that we've been hurt, right? That we boycott each other. Black women ain't nothing. They just need to submit, blah, blah. Well, black men ain't nothing if y'all got yourself. Like, black men ain't nothing. Well, black women, if y'all just listen, like, when does it get to a place where you stop boycotting even each other? The spirit of boycotting is all over you. It's unnecessary. It's not solving anything. If it was solving stuff, man, I'd be the first person out there with my sign. People to get on me on social media. Well, we didn't see you marching, and we blah blah blah. Yeah, you didn't see me marching. I was feeding people while you were marching. Yeah, you didn't see me. Well, we got this law established. Okay, you got that law established. You still out here telling me, right? You telling me how you got all these laws established. Meanwhile, though, every time I come on, you're telling me to say his name and say her name. What's going on, right? Where am I from? I'm from all over the place. If you're talking about where was I born, I guess I was born technically in the United States, but my people are from all over the world, and I've literally lived all over the place. So I can't tell you exactly I'm from one place more than the other. I guess I'm from the culture of Yashrael, I'm from the culture of Shwe, from the culture of Shamayim. That's where I come from. Um, United States Corporation, yeah. It's that every day we live in their culture, most deaf. You mean, yeah, you won't see me. Yeah, I'm not gonna be marching either. I'm so tired of it, and tired of our people talking against each other, right? And so when people say, "Well, what's your solutions?" People will come up to me, "What's your solutions?" Because I'm always people. I always tell people I'm always solution oriented. People say, "Well, I didn't see you write out a solution." Well, once again, we got land that we're developing. Once again, we make sure that we give out education. Once again, we make sure that people can know who they are. Once again, we have people that are stationed in different places. Once again, we're trying to make sure that we meet the needs of people. We got mothers that don't have, we have mothers of children without fathers in the children's lives. We're trying to make sure that we set something up where the fathers can be in their lives. These are things that we can do, and we're trying to make sure we have our culture established. That's people don't want to hear that, but that's going to be number one. What are you going to do to solve everything? Well, it's not my job. What are you going to do to fix the system? I'm not trying to fix the system. The system is trash, but the system works exactly how it's supposed to. It's supposed to be trash. It's supposed to cause people who should fear the Most High to be against one another. And once we have no peace, we fight. That's what it causes. You said, am I an advocate of living off the grid? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I try to do as much off grid as possible. I have, we go to different land, different places and stuff like that. I try to live a lifestyle that's off the grid where people really don't know what's going on with me next or whatever, outside of people that are, close to me. And once again, we're working on land. So the land is going to help us to be able to have our own grid, so to speak. Kamala locked up mad black men as a prosecutor. Oh, not only that, she locked up a lot of sisters. She was locking up people because they wanted to have their children go to different districts because the districts that their children were in didn't have great schools. So they locked them up. Said I forget about the VP not seeing anything, saying anything. Yeah. And once again, everybody's excited. You got Kamala. Like, even if we were to look at the system and say everything in the system is exactly what you were taught, well, what they taught you in school is that the vice president's almost the most meaningless position that exists in the world. To be the vice president means that you have no power, you have no say so, you have no thought process, at least no thought process that gets to be looked at. And whenever you go out to say something, all you're supposed to do is just make sure that you lift up whatever the president's vision is. So you got a black woman. This is Willie Lynch stuff. You got a black woman supporting a white man in a frozen fear of a perpetual position of frozen fear, believing she has to be the strong black woman while married to the stronger white man and being under the other white man. I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's, but we're saying we're celebrating in the streets. Deltas were all out there putting up their little signs, not even realizing that they realize, but not even thinking about the fact you pledged Greek. Like, when's the last time you pledged African? When's the last time you pledged Afrik? When's the last time you pledged Native? When's the last time you pledged Cherokee? When's the last time you pledged to your people? When's the last time but you'll pledge Greek. You see what I'm saying? Like, we are busy trying to, that those same people will tell you boycott and don't even recognize it. As soon as you finish boycotting, you're going right back into that mentality. Sean Carter says Joe knows the experimenting with black people, and Mrs. Harris is unpopular to me. Mm-hmm. How you doing, Erdogan? By the way, instead of comparing them to America, it's wild. I guess I missed the first part, Veli, or maybe I don't remember what part you're talking about. You said we need our own, no other way around it. Yeah. You said that I was reading on Puerto Rico's dealings with slaves post-slavery. Yeah, very interesting, very similar. By the way, Puerto Rico, Cuba, or Puerto Ricano, Cubano, Haitians, Dominicano, the list goes on and on. It's the same. It's the same hustle, same thing. That land is so real. Keep on educating. Amen. We didn't even have the same problems with our men like they did. Yeah, that's why we talked about misogyny last night. What does that even mean? Whose meaning are we taking that for when they say that you are a patriarchal society? Like, how many black men are in a position to make life difficult? They just say, oh, well, a black man cussed or said something bad. Yeah, but he's not a patriarch. How do you keep talking about the patriarchal system and then keep trying to say the black men are patriarchal? I'm not saying that black men are perfect. I'm just saying that you're not gonna put me in the same boat with Elon Musk, right? You ain't gonna put me in the same boat as what's his face? I can't remember the guy's name who has the island, whatever island that he was locking everybody else up on, all these young girls and doing all stuff to young girls and young boys, by the way. Christine said, only under the system of the Most High Yah will things be the way they ought to be. Most deaf. That's why we got to have a system of culture. Thanks for the agreement, Kenya. Barbara said that's her issue, now being in a VP position. Yeah, unseen and unheard. They get the children that hurt. Yeah. But I like the off-grid concept, something seriously considering. We'll never have true equality under the system. I love solutions. Yeah, and the solutions come through culture. By the way, the law comes through culture. All the stuff that you're dealing with is somebody's law, somebody's culture, somebody's science, is somebody's culture. That's why you use the words that they use. Deltoid, that comes from Delta. That's somebody's culture. That's somebody's alphabet. It's not our alphabet, but that's their alphabet. But they took that alphabet from our alphabet, so we might as well go back to the original. Epstein Island, Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. I don't know if I have a way to go over everything we talked about last night in this sense, so we'll post it on the YouTube channel possibly today. We're doing some travel and stuff like that, so and different things. Actually had a rough night last night, but try our best to make sure that we post it for you guys. Said, love you, brother. What would you say our culture is, since we don't exactly know where we came from? Well, first and foremost, our culture is principles. Principles are origins, originality. Do we know the origin? Like, somebody will say that I'm more. Somebody will say I'm a more, for example. What does that even mean? Right? And we say our culture, right? Like, so what does that even mean? It's like somebody says, don't call yourself black, call yourself a Moor. Do you know what a Moor is? Then they try to put all Moors in the same box, but you can't put all Moors in the same box, because that's not what a Moor was. A Moor was describing a whole range of folk that they thought came from one place, but really came from a whole group of people. You have Moors that are in America, that are natives, things like that, right? So culturally speaking, I mean, for me, and it's different, maybe people uphold different things, different tribes. Culturally speaking, I'm of a kingdom that's greater than anywhere on land anyways. And by the way, that's coming from a place of we are a people, period, that think differently than everybody else. So I think differently. I'm called to think differently. If you believe in chakras or whatever, well, guess what? People who believe in chakras, they say that we have different chakras and different number of chakra points in different chakra point places. Like, that's something that's there, right? Like, you can't. I'm not faulting people. I'm just saying people are. I'm not even saying it's wrong. Like, if you are of Irish culture, be of Irish culture, right? So if you're going to say black culture or Moorish culture, whatever, you got to figure out what that is. Now, for me, I say, well, even as far as melanin, like, let's start there, because other people take your melanin or they use it. And if you don't believe that they do, there's a melanin conference. And the first melanin conferences that were happening, they wouldn't even allow the people with melanin to show up. So now people that are melanated, they have to go to melanin. They started their own melanin conferences. They told us in school, this is culture, right? You got to find culture. Simple things like, this is just beginning stuff, right? This live is not designed to go extremely in depth on these things and stuff like that. Maybe we can talk about the culture question or some other things when we have our Patreon live, or maybe, when we do another, when the Most High says it's time for us to go into our next, I think on Monday, more than likely we'll go into our next series, but whatever the series is. But look at something as simple as culture, right? In science, they don't want you to know what chemistry is, right? Can anybody tell me what chemistry is real quick before we go deeper? I'm sorry, I am done. You said I would love to. Oh no, I think I saw that already. You love to live off grid. So can anybody tell me what chemistry is? You said laws come from culture. You have some serious and heavy thoughts, my friend. Amen. Well, laws protect rights. You got the right to do whatever you want, but every culture comes with laws and how they say you protect your rights. Our culture protects our rights. Even legally speaking, you don't present what you want to do. You present how the law protects your culture. And you tell them, I, as a master or a teacher of the law, I'm going to teach you as the public servant what it is that you're going to do for me. It's a different way of looking at it, right? Can you say, love you, brother? What would you say? Oh, no, I just said that. Okay, so we're answering that question now, right? You said, I actually don't know what chemistry is for real, for real. Sorcery. No, no, not sorcery. There we go, right? You said who? Who is they? Well, if you listen long enough, you'll be able to figure out who they is if you're just coming on with this. I don't know who I was talking about specifically, so I'm not going to answer it because I don't want to answer out of context. I'm about contextual facts. If you listen long enough, though, we don't give facts without context. We don't give context without facts. If you'd like to listen in long enough, you're more than welcome to. Or if you want to tell me what I was saying before, put it in the question mark box, and I can try and swing back to it at another time. So watch this. So Kimmy comes from Kemet, and Kimmy means black. That's what it means. So chemistry is blackstry, chemistry is blackstry. Or if you want to, some people don't like to say black, so we would say the study of melanin. Everything that exists is studied. Now, everything that's living has melanin, as far as long as you're not plant life. Plant life has something that's similar to melanin. You've been taught that it's called chlorophyll, right? Right. You said you Cubano. Well, welcome in, right? So it's the study of black. That's what chemistry is. Now, who taught you that in school? Did anybody learn that in school? When they did, you had to take chemistry one, maybe, or maybe you in our school in high school is I think you had to take biology one, chemistry one, and then biology two, right? Something like that. But or maybe you even if you were in advanced class, you took chemistry two or something like that, or in college you got the chemistry two. What teacher taught you that chemi came from chemet? Like this is known. See what I'm saying about culture? Now, who you see what I'm saying? So they're studying your culture and they're telling you that your culture doesn't matter. Matter of fact, in a chemistry book, if you ask or if you ask a chemistry teacher about melanin, they will tell you all melanin does is just decide how dark you are. But that's not even true because melanin is not measured from the outside in, it's measured from the inside out. So I can be darker than somebody else and they could still possibly, it usually won't work that way, but nevertheless, I could be darker than somebody else, and they could be just as African, or just as Israel, or just as Shui, or just as Ashanti, or just as Kemet, or just as Kush. I told you I'm mixed with a lot, or just as Taino, or just as Cherokee, or just as Omekshi, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. But I can have somebody who's just as much from the culture than I am, and they can be lighter than me and still have more melanin. Right? We come in different shades. Melanin is not measured. Scientists will never measure melanin from the outside in. They will measure it from the inside out. So it is not what's outside that you judge a man by, but it's even what's on the inside. You thought that was just a nice poetic thing, but even in science, they comprehend, culturally speaking, right? From the right culture, from the right perspective, that if you're going to measure the melanin, the value of melanin, you can't do it from the outside in. You got to do it from the inside out. Atoms were discovered in Kemet, sure. I have no problem with that. And plant melanin, yes, is chlorophyll. You're dealing with the same product. The same way that melanin works for us is the same way that chlorophyll works for plants. You have to have magnesium together to make sure, right? You got to be able to digest your magnesium to ensure that you can go ahead and hold in melanin in place, right? And digest food correctly and things like that and get the melanin out of what you're, but if you're eating meat, to be able to even get melanin stuff out of that, right? If you're eating plants, to get chlorophyll out of that, right? And to get the things you need that come with it. Well, the same thing. If you're going to plant something, make sure that you put some magnesium with what you plant. This is culture. You said my pops was in the hospital. I mentioned melanin and vitamin D3 in the room cleared quickly. Yeah. Or if you're melanated, you need more sunlight than everybody else. You're people of the sun. Why do you need more sunlight, even just culturally, even just straight scientifically speaking? Why would you need more sunlight than everybody else? Well, somebody who's not as melanated can go in the sun and get everything that they need for the day in a matter of seconds because they don't have melanin that protects them from the sun. Matter of fact, they can get too much sunlight, right? but you can't get enough sometimes, especially the darker you get. So you're going to need to go in the sun for 30 minutes to get what you need, right? Because you got more melanin, and you got more melanin that actually blocks the sun from getting to some of the melanin that's going to be on the inside of you. That's culture. You see that? Something that simple that changes your mindset on who you are. Amen. I'm glad you guys learning something, right? Uh, Something that simple that changes your perspective on who you are. All right. If you know that now here's a question for you, right? If we teach this stuff in our classes and stuff, and my wife does an excellent job with natural medicine too, and with um, fibroid cyst, and is possibly going to teach on some other things. And she's a herbalist and different things, right? So you said, isn't that crazy? Grandmother told you to be afraid of the sun. Yeah, you shouldn't be afraid of the sun. The sun is great for you. Sunlight makes you feel happy. If you're depressed, we say this all the time. If you're dealing with depressed, take your shoes. I got my shoes off right now, even though I'm not in the grass. But take your shoes off. Go in the grass. Stand up on the grass. Right. Put your hands in the air and look not directly into the sun, but look right off to the sun, or close your eyes, and you will not be depressed in a matter of seconds. Matter of fact, I said this the other day. When I mentioned the sun, some of you started smiling. When I mentioned putting your hands up in the sun, your mind made the corners of your mouth go up just because you heard me say, go in the sun and put your hands up and put your feet in the ground. Your body already knows, right? Your DNA memory, which is in melanin, it already knows. What I think of DNA testing, I think even if it's valuable, as far as I think even if it's correct, as far as they get correct results, which I doubt, because even scientists will tell you they only know about how 1% of DNA actually works, if that, right? So we don't know how DNA works, but they're using DNA testing to tell you where you are. But I will say this: that you don't need DNA testing, as far as, unless you want to go person by person. But that's not DNA testing. That's you being able to see which stuff lines up as far as names and this and that. But DNA testing just basically says we found some people, supposedly we found some people in this area that have that you have similar DNA with, right? By the way, like you 50%. So for example, let's say you share, they say we see like you share 80% of stuff like that. We found people that has DNA that seems like it's attached to you, and 80% of people live in Nigeria, right? Or that we found. That's great. So that means that there could have been some people that live somewhere else that moved there, or they say, oh, these people in this part of America lived there. Well, I mean, slavery is from there. Doesn't mean that you're from there, right? So even in that sense, it's not necessarily an exact science. Nevertheless, though, um, you know, even if you know those things, it's about culture, right? And it's about knowing that. Yeah, somebody said sun gazing, yeah, things like that, right? So even if you know those things, but I forget. I'm trying to get back. I'm sorry. Where were we going? Uh, Somebody asked me about DNA testing. I got off track. Uh, he said felt like running outside right now. Amen. Yeah, I'm trying to. Where were we headed? Um, oh, melanin. So, question for you now, right? And I'm not going to get extremely deep in this. Like we say, we have tons of stuff here. We're talking about chemistry, DNA, but also we're talking about melanin. So we know that it's the study of melanin. That's what chemistry is. And by the way, there are scientists. Now, I don't know this to be true, but there are scientists that theorize that melanin is in the stars. It's on every planet. It's on every living thing. They even believe it to be in rocks and things like that. Now, I don't know about that, but that's what they say. When your baby is born and the sperm hits the egg, literally, it is where the baby starts forming around a melanin crystal, right? That cell would fill with melanin. These melanin crystals, that first cell, everything keeps developing. The baby develops around this thing. It's in your mind. You call that thing your pineal gland, right? Everything develops around it. Your pineal gland, one of the most important things concerning your memory and everything like that. But here's a question for you. Another question, right? Those of you who are not used to me, I like to ask a lot of questions. I'm on my Columbo vibe. You said PSA, make sure you tell the company to destroy your DNA and info after the testing. Yeah, you should tell them to tell that, but that's the real reason why they're doing DNA testing, because they're trying to just get more DNA. You said amen on the sun, right? But here's another question for you. You guys ready for this? You guys ready for this? Here we go. Right? Yeah, that's where people get the third eye concept from, because of where it's located. Now, another question for you. You guys ready? I'm on my Columbo vibe, right? Here's a question. Here we go. What is it that they use to test if medicine is actually works or not? What do they test? How can they tell if medication that you're taking, right? We're talking about not natural medicine, we're talking about the chemicalized stuff, right? So not natural, not natural, right? So it's not something that helps uplift your melanin, right? It's something that's going to mess up your melanin, right? I just gave you a hint in that. What is it that they're going to use to test to see if the medicine that they're giving you actually works or not, right? Sometimes that lab mice, okay, rats, monkeys, animals. I'm looking for something else, so more specific. I kind of gave you the hint. What do all those things that you're listing have in common? See, I want you to think different. I'm asking you to think different. I'm trying to put you in a position where you start thinking culturally. There goes. Kenya said it. They check melanin levels. You. That's another way of saying it, Sister Barbara, right? Black people. They check melanin levels. Dark animals. You could possibly put that, even though they might do a white lab rat or something like that too, white lab rat or something like that as well. But they check melanin levels. So if they give medication to something, they check to see how much it breaks down the melanin. If the medicine you're taking does not have an effect on the melanin, then it is not considered to be medicine, and therefore they can't administer it to you, at least not legally. Did you catch that? If they give you medication, it is supposed to break down your melanin. So another question. Thank you for the likes and the shares and all that stuff across all the platforms. We appreciate you. So now here's another question for you. Are you ready? You ready for this question? Okay. So if we know that chemistry comes from this is culture. See how something small like this begins to take us down a road that's different because we can perceive things differently because we're willing to have a different conversation, which is more honest. All right. So if we know, so now if I'm in a position where I know that chemistry is chemistry, the study of chemin, and chemi is talking about black, or chemet is talking about black chem, and if I know that black is dealing with melanin, and if I know that if they give me medication, it has to break down melanin, or in order for them to say it's proper medication. Well, question for you: if I give somebody medication, you said your brain is shifting. Okay, watch this, right? You said it's not potential enough if it doesn't break down melanin, right? So question for you, right? Somebody said blood, somebody said IC. Okay, cool. Watch this. If I give you medication, if I give two people, let's say it like that. Thank you, Holy Spirit. If I give two people medication and one person has more melanin and one person has less melanin, who do you think the medication will hurt more? The person who has more melanin or the person who has less melanin? Hmm. Come on, right? See, culture. If you look at it different culturally, people who are in this culture, they're trying to hide that this breaks down melanin. We know it breaks down melanin. So when somebody says you're not in the system of oppression, you won't even give us medicine that doesn't break us down more than others. Yeah, the person that has more melanin. Because if you have more of what's going to be broken down, that means you're going to have more issues. Now, we could go into some other things too that people aren't even aware of, as far as not all melanin is even created the same. What do you mean by that, Kofi? I mean, literally what I just said. That there's some melanin that has sulfur at the center, and some melanin that has selenium. Which means now, if I'm giving you certain things that are going to mess around with that selenium, then I'm gonna mess you up even more. This is culture. This is just something as simple as looking at something from an Afrocentric perspective. Science, when you think, see, they taught you in school that science means, like they'll say, like you'll hear people even say, you know, science is great, science is relative. Who's science? Everything you do is coming from culture. I'm sorry, you said, do you believe that blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are the children of Israel? I believe that certain people are the children of Israel. Not everybody that's black or looks a certain way or looks a certain color is, but yes, are there people, I wouldn't even, well, I guess they might call themselves Hispanics, but are there people who are from Latin speaking countries or Spanish speaking countries, or are there people that are native? Are there people that are from Africa that are there? Yes, we would look at Second Esdras chapter 13 verses 40 through 45. We would look at obviously talking about slave ships, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, but also 2 verses 15 through 68. We would look at Zephaniah and Zechariah, literally telling you where people went and scattered to even before they scattered when Rome was taken down. We'll look at, all types of things, right? We can look at Oluwada Equiano, who's the guy who literally wrote an autobiography, had never read a Bible before, had heard everybody talking about it. He read it and he realized, because he was a young prince, he was taken. He bought his freedom at 20. He ends up reading the Bible and he says, wait a minute, also they're talking about this Bible, the stuff I used to do. And he said, oh, I get it. He's like, finally, I read this Bible. I realized I'm an Israelite. We kept all these laws. We kept all these commandments to this day, even though there'll be people that'll tell you there's Old Testament, New Testament, because they're in that Nicolaitan doctrine that you're warned about in Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 2 for the third assembly, the assembly of Pergamos, right? The Nicolaitan doctrine is Old Testament, New Testament, right? So, but, so I do believe those things, but I leave that there because we're still focusing in on melanin, right? So that's your culture. And even what I just described is culturally. See, a lot of people can't do all that because you were told for the longest time that it's foolish for you to even identify with the word that you read. You say, I read the word, I read the Bible, but you can't even just do that in your mind. You can't identify, even if you can't identify person by person by person, name by name by name, you can't even say, well, if we know West Africans in 1700s were still Negro land, right? And they were still in Negro land, or in this place called Negro land that they recalled. They called Negro land in Guinea, and on the map in the 1700s, they said this is the scattered people of Israel. And on the same map, they had another place not too far from it that said this is the kingdom of Judah. Right? Why would they call it the kingdom of Judah unless there were people from Judah there? See, this is cultural. But somebody would look at me and say, "Oh, you're wrong." Somebody Afrocentric would say, "Why? How dare you talk about that Bible? How you talk about that? The white man made it up. Yeah, they did the slave Bible." But I ain't talking about the slave Bible. Well, you know about the Council of Nicaea, bro. I know Paleo Hebrew. I know how we spoke, and I don't know all of it, but I know enough of it to where I can teach it to our people, and we can begin to start realizing that the idea of the Trinity is in the name. Like, you can't even talk about Yahweh, which is the name of the Most High, without talking about Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You can't talk about love, which is Ahaba, without talking about the name of the Most High. You can't talk about Elohim, which is the title of the Most High, if you don't talk about Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You can't talk about Barashit, which is the actual name of Genesis and the very first word of the Bible, which John later on says Barashit, right? So Barashit means in beginning, or some people would say in the beginning, but we don't use the word the. So we said in beginning. And then John starts off by saying, in beginning, telling you, going all the way back to your culture, but you don't recognize it because you think it's the book of John and you think it's the book of Genesis, but nobody told you that it's Barashit. And John starts off by saying Barashit. And in essence, when he's talking about Yashva HaBashir, he's giving you Barashit part 2. He's saying that I'm gonna close the chapter. If you know your Hebrew characters, Aleph the Tub, the first character, Aleph the father, the second character, Bet, the son who comes out the right house, those two working together to be able to make sure that there's humility, Gamal, to be able to go Dalet, the door that gives us access to the Hey, Holy Spirit. And then from there, go all the way through to those. The last character is the Tub, and the character before that is Sheen. That means that he will be destroyed on the cross. And he says, therefore, I'm not the Alpha and the Omega, I'm the Aleph and the Tub. I'm the source of everything, all the characters and everything that you speak are going to be spoken through this to lead us to the tub, the mark. And once that's there, that's the place of completion, where it's finished, where it's matured, where it's perfected. So that's why Christ will then come by. This is cultural. This is why Christ. See, people don't look at culture. They don't know. So you can't read Hebrew. You can't write Hebrew. You can't think Hebrew. Remember, we said that culture gives you a reason. And therefore, if you have a reason, you can start to reason with people. There's reasoning. But because people lack culture, they have no reason. And because they have no reason, they lack the ability to start reasoning. And so now we have other people who aren't even concerned with your culture and are trying to get you to dismiss your culture and to sign off on everybody else's culture, trying to tell you, oh yeah, you should just listen to whatever we say. That's there's nowhere in this. Like even the law that you go by, there's no such thing as public and private law if there's not substantive law. Substantive law means the substance. Well, the Bible says, well, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. So the evidence of things not yet seen is public and private law. It comes out of substance, right? You have to have faith or walk a certain way, but faith is what? Out of hope. So what is the hope in? The hope is in natural law. It goes natural law, it goes substantive law, it goes public and private law, right? But before that, you got to go natural law, you got to go to universal law. And once you go to universal law, you got to go to the laws of the kingdom law, spiritual law. And if you don't believe that, then why is it that if I were to give you some food from the store and somebody owns it, right? If for somebody to be able to own it, to patent it, to say that they have ownership over it, nobody can use it, they have to change it. But they say in their law, if the Most High said it, it made it. If I went out there and I grabbed you something off a tree and I gave it to you, I said you can eat it. They said that I can sell it to you, but I can't patent it. Why? Because the Most High said it. That's in their law, because they still have to respect spiritual law. In the federal government, in the military, they have to respect your religious mindset before any other mindset. It's lawful. When I marry people together, guess what? I don't have them have to go to the state to get married, right? I don't need to have you go to the state. You know what we do? You sign a contract. You create your own contract, because your contract, especially when it's to your religious belief, your contract is more powerful than the Constitution. They're trying to get you to talk about constitutional law. You don't even understand that spiritual law supersedes state law, and state law supersedes constitutional law, because the Constitution now is on some mess. If you don't know how to use it correctly, it's based off of a corporation called the United States. It's not even based off of an actual real place called the United States of America. Think about it. It's like somebody saying, I'm black, but I don't have a country. That's the argument people make, right? So they can say I'm black, but they can say I'm black Kemet, I'm black Kush, I'm black Shri, I'm black Yashtel, I'm black whatever, right? They can't say, they just say I'm black, right? Well, the same thing, right? That's why they try to get you to become African American. Don't be African to where now you got to place the place in Africa you come from, so you got to think different. They say no, be an African that's in America. And by the way, look up Black Star Dictionary. That's considered to be a fake or artificial person. You say you're colored, you say you're black, you say you're Negro, all these things you consider to be an artificial person. You said I read and finished the Bible 3 times and truly never read it, because we didn't have the culture, right? This is all cultural. If you don't know the culture of something, you can't speak on it. We were talking this week, right, about how is the was it a Revolutionary War or was it a Civil War? If you comprehend that they didn't have, I mean, they technically, in a sense, had a Revolutionary War, but if you comprehend it's more of a Civil War, then you look at what happened in 1776, and then 1789/1791, and then 1860, and then 1862, and then 1865, and then 1869 and 71. You start looking at that stuff a lot different. And some of you might not even know what I'm speaking on, right? Because we don't know the culture of it. So when I look at the Constitution, I'm looking at it completely different than somebody else, because I know the culture behind it. When somebody talks to me about Wall Street, I know what Wall Street was. I know Wall Street was a place they sold slaves. So when you go to Wall Street, you talking about slavery. If I get into stuff as far as investing on Wall Street, I have to recognize that I'm dealing with slave masters, slave owners. Still to this day. When I look at debt, when somebody says the national debt, I know what debt is. Debt is slavery, and slavery is debt. So somebody try to tell me about the national debt. Guess what? Are we having a conversation about how many slaves are in America and how much those slaves owe, and how many banks across the world, including the Federal Reserve, is there a debt to, and what are they using to go ahead and say, hey, we can pay off this debt with more slavery? How are they doing that? We ain't talking nothing but culture. So it's difficult. That's why we're on every day. If you want to get more on the culture, more answers on it, go to the YouTube channel, #find Kofi, #FIND, my name, KOFI, right? And find that on there, right? But we're talking culture. You said learn, unlearn, and remember. Amen. Right? Like this is what we're dealing with. You said what? Sounds suspicious. Why are they breaking down melanin? Well, they're breaking down melanin. I don't even know if we need to answer that. Right? You say, amen, we must read the word from the right lens, cultural and spiritually. So when you're on here, you feel like you're being schooled all over. Amen. Amen to that. Said you dropped your phone. Prayerfully, it's all right. But this is what we're dealing with. Nobody, we don't know the culture. The school system is a scam, all that. Right? College is a scam. You went to college and paid. Some of y'all still paying off college with interest, and they have more interest if you ain't pay it soon enough. And did they teach you any of this? Are you in a position where you say that you are financially independent? Did they teach you that? Did they teach you what a check was? Oh, okay. Well, be careful out there. Amen. Thanks for being on with this. Be careful out there with that snow. You said that's why welfare will never go away. Yeah, and even if you look up what a welfare was originally for, right? But you got to know the culture of it. And now we got to start, because now if you know the culture of things, then you start asking questions. Like I said, here's the deal: ask questions, right? Even the stuff that I'm saying, question it. Go and look for people who question what I'm saying and see what they're saying and see who makes more sense, right? Even if you need to get in the middle, question everything, right? But don't question everything just for the sake of questioning it. Question everything because you want to know why. Yeah, spiritual law supersedes all other laws, all day, every day. The Federal Reserve, long story short, the Federal Reserve, people will argue how much of a percentage is owed to the Federal Reserve, but basically, the Federal Reserve is in charge of all. All banks bow down to the Federal Reserve. All countries just about bow down to the Federal Reserve. Matter of fact, the only countries that are considered to be evil countries are countries that basically the Federal Reserve isn't allowed to be able to go into. So when you hear them talking trash about Putin, and they're like, "Oh, Putin's going to Ukraine and he's denazifying this and that or whatever," I mean, America's still in countries illegally too. Ain't nobody talking about America still in Kuwait. You know what I'm saying? Like America's still all over the place. They don't care. Nobody talking about America still in South Korea. Ain't nobody talking about America's still trying to be in parts of Vietnam. The Vietnam War started. You got to go back to Eisenhower and stuff for the Vietnam War. People think the Vietnam War was just a certain amount of years. No, so but the Federal Reserve basically everybody's in debt to the Federal Reserve. Most of these countries. So the reason why you hear bad stuff about North Korea, even though I'm not saying I support North Korean views on things, especially their dictator who claims to be some kind of god or deity or whatever they would call it in their language, in their culture. Um, but at the end of the day, the reason why they talk bad about him, he won't let them open up a bank, a Federal Reserve Bank. The reason why you talk bad about Cuba is because they wouldn't let him open the Federal Reserve Bank. Once again, I'm not supporting everything that he's done, but let's not act like Fidel Castro didn't try to come to America first and say, "Hey, can y'all help us? Like, we need some help. Just finish the stuff up. We need some help as society, financially, this and that. We'll become democratic. We need some help." And America said, "Well, we didn't want you to win. So since we didn't want you to win, we ain't gonna help you." That's the culture of America. And so then what happened? Fidel said, "Well, I got to make up a new culture because we're going to have to figure out a way to make this work." And he turned to communism out of necessity for his people. Because that's the same Fidel Castro that we talk so bad about. But in African nations, a lot of African nations, Fidel Castro will always have a great name. You know why? Because you can say whatever you want about him. And he's did a lot of stuff evil, I would say. But a lot of Africans will always have a soft spot in their heart for him because Fidel Castro came by. And when other people weren't willing to help and support African nations, he was out there supporting. Like real talk. When other people wouldn't help us, when America wouldn't help us, when the CIA and the FBI were over there killing off the people who we had put in place, once we finally had people back off of at least physically occupying our land, and we started being able to have black leadership, they were killing us off or just outright getting rid of us. One of my famous people in history, Kwame Nkrumah, right, who helped to be able to make sure that Ghana got its territory or got its, the new Ghana, the country we know as Ghana, was able to come into existence. As soon as he got in there, FBI, CIA, places in Europe, everybody was in there making sure that they basically displaced them and got our own people, especially young people, got into their heads and told them that he was nothing. That's trash. But that's what they did. That's what they do, right? I'm telling you, culture. See that, and that's just small stuff. That's why we once again we got all this stuff on YouTube, and we got it on we got way more on the podcast, right? But we got stuff on YouTube. We have it on the podcast. We got stuff on Patreon. We're constantly giving you culture. And we're trying to give you context and facts, not context without facts, and not facts without context. Salah, right? We're trying to ensure that you have these things in your head because you never had them, right? Comrade Fred Hampton. All we're doing is giving you culture. And that's just one small thing. Some melanin takes us to that place. It's being able to track your family or just know who came from who takes you to a place, right? Knowing that there's a corporation in the United States. Therefore, when you're dealing with the United States corporation, you have to know your culture comes first, but you need now to be able to go into their language to be able to do so. Holy Spirit's been leading me to do this for a while, and I don't want to forget again and therefore be completely disobedient. So let's make sure we go here. We're going to go to the Willie Lynch letter. Some of you have already done the Willie Lynch syndrome with us a couple times, but we're going to do Willie Lynch letter, and I'm going to just read a spot in it to show you how important culture is, because we don't even know stuff like language is culture. And we think that's why you have to look at this as a system. Your culture is a system. You're battling against something systemic. It was systematically, that means purposefully put in place, and it is systemic. It means it's designed to keep going on by itself. You have to have a culture systematically put in place, therefore, that will systemically combat the evil system. That's why there's private law, where you can have your own system you live in, and there's public law, which you can be part of the public. The public means the government. But we don't know that. We think because we put on a sign, Black Lives Matter, unnecessary protests, we put on a sign, Black Lives Matter, and we go out there and we march. Therefore, things are going to automatically change because somebody's going to agree with Black Lives Matter. It doesn't matter how many people agree with Black Lives Matter. If Black is an artificial person, then legally they don't have to do anything they don't feel like doing. Because in their culture, in their government, in their language, in their culture, they will tell you Black don't mean nothing. And there's so many different things we can get out of this, but we've already done the Willie Lynch syndrome thing. Really, you have to look for it mostly on Facebook, right? But we're gonna look at something. We're gonna look at language. We're gonna look at language. This is Willie Lynch letter. I'm just gonna read out of the Willie Lynch letter, okay? All right, Tamika, you have a blessed one. We're just gonna read out the Willie Lynch letter. Y'all ready? Here it goes. Language. You're talking about language. It says crossbreeding completed. So this is when they were breeding us to try and get different shades, and they were raping our women to try and get different shades and stuff, and have people fighting and stuff, right? So once you have us there, that's what he was saying. Once we got these Black people there, they would have called us N-words, right? But once you have these Black people there, you have our people there. He said for further severance, that means to cut them off further from what? From their original beginning. And that's a principle. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against our origins. You out here marching, waiting for physical stuff to happen. You're not wrestling against the physical. You're wrestling against principalities, your origin. I'm sorry, Ms. Max said British Army moved out of Belize and then the American Army moved in. Yep. Same people, by the way. It was just a trade, and they had to make a deal to make that happen. Motorcycle Diaries. Yep, the list goes on and on. So let's look at this. So we're talking about language. This is Willie Lynch speaking. Crossbreeding completed. For further severance from their original beginning, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue of both the new N-word and the new mule. In other words, the N-word that we took from being in their civilization, right? And we took them because if you're in another civilization, you're called savage. That means to be wild, right? So if you're in another civilization, you're savage, you're wild. So he said, now that we take the N-word and we're taking them out of their civilization, which we consider to be savage, right? And we consider to be a human being legally. They say legally, a human being is considered to be a monster, which should have no rights. So now that we've made human beings into monsters in our civilization, where they have no rights, that's what he's saying. See, all these people have been taking sovereignty with us. You see how this, you got to know how this stuff is working. They were used, this language is not new. Just because America came to existence after this doesn't mean that they're not using ancient ways of thought. So he says, crossbreeding completed for further severance from the original, the principle, the original beginning, we must completely, how much so? Partially? right? Catch the words we're using. Catch the words he's using. Did I say partially? Right? No, completely. Did he say partially? Are they looking to partially cut you off from your origin and your tongue? No, he says completely annihilate, not just even separate at this point, annihilate the mother tongue of both the new N word, the person they taught you to become, and the new mule. That's the person that they mixed you with so that you would have identity in your DNA even and wouldn't fight against white supremacy because you'd be like, well, part of me is white and part of me is black. So aren't we all the same? Mindset that happens all the time. I reminded of the person that they call, what's her name, Doja Cat, right? And how she got in trouble and stuff. People say, how could she say that about her own people? Pretty easily. Pretty easily, right? Because you've been trained to do that, right? So now that we've taken away that, the new N-word and the new mule, and institute a new language, right? We're talking about culture, we're talking about language, all right? The Willie Lynch letter. Willie, Willie, Lynch is in Lynchburg, Virginia, or Lynch like hanging someone from a tree, Lynch, and then letter, Letter. All right. So now that we've completed the crossbreeding, we've taken them away and separated them from their origins. We have to completely annihilate the mother tongue of both the new N-word, the new mule, and institute a new language that involves a new life's work of both. So we need them to speak a new language because they're going to be in a different work. They're going to work for us and not for themselves. They're going to work for us and not the Most High. Right? We've got to separate them from who they are so that they will only look for us. And if you Google Willie Lynch letter, like I just said, look for the second. I'm reading literally the second one down that you can click on. Okay, if you want to catch it, it's right underneath. It's on. I'm at the end of page 3, getting ready to go to page 4. Right. We're talking about controlling the language. Controlling the language. When you control the language, you control the culture. That's why culture is important. That's why we're speaking different. That's why we say different words. That's why we're using proper etymology. That's why we're trying to get you to comprehend what we're talking about. Right? So peep game. So it says we got to institute a new language that involves the new life's work of both. Of who? The new mule, which by the way, they use the term mule because he said, if you read earlier, he was talking about how the mule is somebody or is something where basically a mule cannot reproduce. So he says basically if we get people to be so mixed that they'll be so confused that they won't actually reproduce a culture. They'll just fall in line with whatever, even if they decide to be black, which was very rarely going to happen in those days, right? So they ain't concerned about that. So basically, most times when you have something that's so mixed, they're not going to give their offspring, like in a sense, right? A real mule cannot reproduce at all, right? But because you're mixing a donkey with a horse to be able to get a mule. So basically, you're not going to have anything that can reproduce. So he's like, since you won't have anything that can reproduce anyways, like you don't have to worry about, even if the mule is acting funny or foolish or whatever, the mule's going to die off eventually and just things will go back as they were. So he said, if we mix, what the mindset is, if we can get people to mix cultures so much because we mix them together so much and they won't consider themselves black, right? It's our pleasure, Tulis, right? They won't consider themselves black. Yeah, I know you printed it out, taught it to your children. Amen. Right? Because they won't consider themselves black anymore, and they'll say, well, I'm mixed, or it doesn't matter what color you are. We had a family member that got with somebody. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not trying to say all white people bad, blah, blah. I'm just telling you his situation. And they had a lot of situations. Both of them had issues and stuff like that I won't get into. But long story short, they were busy telling us, we're going to be different and our children are going to be different and our children are mixed and all children are going to start to look mixed soon. And so now they're going to say anything. And now guess what they're dealing with? Racism. And they separated and now it's stereotypical white versus black stuff. And it's even being used. The white person in the relationship is using the stuff against the black person. And the black person's like, oh, you see how all these people do blah, blah. And it's like, yo, man, forget white, black or whatever. We told you that you're going to have to make sure that you comprehend culture and stuff, and you have to make sure if somebody's getting with you, y'all gonna have to understand each other's culture. And if not, you're gonna have some issues. It's not the white black thing, it's the culture thing. And you didn't check to see if that person was gonna support your culture and vice versa. Yeah, heavy in New Orleans, right? They use that all the time. So watch this. So he said, once again, we got to teach them new language for these mules, for these people that are just gonna fall in line anyways, and we got to teach new language for those that'll be around for a while that will have to identify as black because we're gonna keep them in that position. So that new N word we've taken, and broke down to where he gonna listen to whatever we have to say, and she gonna listen to whatever we have to say, and the children gonna be trained to do the same thing. And that new mule, that basically is gonna fall right back in line with whatever we say. We're gonna make sure everybody's on the same page with language. Now here's the part. Now I quote this part quite often, but now we get to read it like word for word. And those who are on the podcast, thanks for being on. We appreciate you. Feel free to join us on one of the other platforms, and have a great day. Or if you want to catch up on the rest of it on YouTube, we'll probably be on for a little while longer because we want to make sure we get this. Somebody asked about culture, and it's important, right? But this is what we're trying to say: institute culture, and you won't have to worry about unnecessary boycotts. All right, so watch this. So he says, after all that, he says, language is a peculiar institution. What did he just say? He said, language is a peculiar institution. What did he say again? I want you to hear that. I want you to get that in your spirit. I don't want you to accept it, but I want you to know it in your spirit. All right? There's a difference, right? He said, language is a peculiar institution. Why would he say that? Salah, I want you to think about that for a second, right? Why would he say, language, what people use? I want you to just think about it. Salah, we're gonna let that sit for a few seconds. Language is a peculiar institution. I want that to sit there just for a second. Language is a peculiar institution. Now, why? Why would he put that there? Why was that necessary? Well, let's look up the definition of institution. Uh-oh. Let's look up, because see, they're using words, and we're not thinking about why they would use those words. Why would they use that word? Why would they say language is a peculiar institution? Why would they say that? That's weird, right? Maybe it doesn't seem weird to you, right? But they use things for a specific reason. Why would he say that? I'm giving y'all time to get there. I want you to read it with me. I'm gonna just, I'm gonna Google it, and then I'm gonna look it up in Black's Law Dictionary. We're gonna do both. We're gonna Google it, and we're gonna use it, the Black's Law Dictionary. Language is a peculiar institution. Let's look up, because peculiar just means it doesn't fit in, right? And we're peculiar people, right? But peculiar just means we don't fit in, but it's an institution. It's a peculiar institution. Why are you saying institution? So we're gonna look up institution as far as just a regular a regular definition off of Google or something like that, right? Institution. Institution is a noun. T-I-O-N makes any word a noun, right? T-I-O-N makes anything a person, place, or thing, right? So we already know it's a noun, right? We don't even have to worry about that. So we know it's a person, a place, or thing. Something will be instituted in a person. Something will be instituted as a place. Something will be instituted as a thing. So it's a peculiar institution. Now here's the definition. It is a society or organization founded for a religious, educational, social, or similar purpose. It is what? It is a society or organization organization founded for a what? Here's why language is founded. What? It is founded to do what? It is founded to do what? It is founded for a religious, educational, social, or similar purpose. So language is an institution that's put in place to do what? This is what he's saying, is that language is something that's set apart to set apart a society or organization for religious reasons. Religion means what we do religiously, right? So what a legion of people do, right? Repetitively, that's religious. What a legion of people do repetitively, right? That's religion. What a legion of people do repetitively, that's a legion. Religion. Right? That's what he's telling us. Religion. 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 Right? What we're repetitively going to do as a group over and over and over and over and over again. Religion. All right. So a society or organization founded by a religious or what educational, they're going to educate you. The language will educate you. It's also social. The language will make you a society, and it all or a similar purpose to those. Here's another definition. It is what? An established official organization. So it's an established official language or organization. That's why if you speak French, then the assumption usually is you are French. You have learned from somebody who is French. You have lived in France. They don't even call it French. When you speak French, they actually say le français. They don't say I speak French. They say I speak the French because it's a culture. They say don't take it outside. If you try to take it outside their culture and you use it in wow, right up there in Canada. Well, it starts with the letter M, doesn't it? I've been there before. I don't even know why I'm having an issue, right? But nevertheless, if you go up there, right, and you use French up there, they will say that's not French in France. They won't accept it. They'll say that we don't speak that. That's not French. That's not the French. We don't know what that is. It's something weird. Anybody who speaks French will try to speak French in why am I forgetting what the name of it is up there? Montreal, right? If you go up there and you try to speak French in Quebec, in Montreal, and you right, if you take that French to France, they will say we don't recognize that because it's not the French. I'm not even saying that's good, bad, whatever. I'm just trying to tell you how culture works. He's trying to tell you it's a cultural thing. It's a peculiar institution, right? But once again, it's an established official organization having an important role in the life of a country, such as a bank. So banks speak language. Churches speak a language, don't they? If somebody says, "Won't he do it?" Right? Somebody say, "Won't he do it?" Somebody might say, "Won't he will?" Right? You know what that means if you've been in some churches, right? You speak a language, don't you? You speak a certain type of language, right? Let's just keep it 100. You keep it. You're speaking a language. If somebody says God is good, you'll say all the time, and then somebody will say all the time, and you'll say God is good. You speak a language. It's a peculiar institution, right? It also says that legislature speak language. No problem, Sister Deborah. We got you on. Sorry for the lighting today. Right? It's also a place where people are confined or are cared for sorry, a place where people are confined or are cared for on account of age, disability, or mental illness. So language changes with different ages. It changed. This is what he's saying. He's saying it's a peculiar institution. So he's saying language changes with age, it changes with disability, it also changes with mental illness. Mm. Marriage is an institution. Marriage has a whole different kind of conversation, doesn't it? If you thought that you could converse with somebody, get married. I promise you, if you don't know how to speak love languages and stuff, marriage is going to mess you up. Right? That's why you got to be pre-qualified for marriage. Marriage is a whole different level of communication in marriage. Right? Marriage is a whole different thing. You know, it's a whole different thing. It's a different institution. It's an institution. See, dating is not an institution. Dating is illegal in our culture, right? But marriage is an institution. Why? Because you're literally becoming one with somebody. Marriage is sex. Sex is marriage in our culture. And it is so much that even when you look up the law, that your marriage, once again, as we always say, your marriage is not even considered to be something that is finalized until you consummate. If you don't consummate, they will say your marriage can be annulled. He said that Willie Lynch is the case for social injustice to oppress us as a people. Well, I mean, back then, you weren't considered to be a people. And still, once again, if you look up Black's Law Dictionary, a black person is not considered to be a real person. A Negro is not considered to be a real person. Person of color, a colored person, is not considered to be a real person. They are all considered to be artificial people. So a black person has never been a real person in the United States of America, and is still not a real person in the United States of America. That's why if I'm black all day, but when it comes to somebody saying, well, who are you or what are you as far as in court or on paperwork? Oh, I'm a natural man. Have different names that I go under and all these type of things, right? But I'm a natural man. I know legally what they're trying to do. They're trying to get me to say that I'm something I'm not. Right? In their culture, do you know how to speak their language? Right? Now let's also look up institution as far as Black's Law Dictionary. Right? Willie Lynch, he said language is a peculiar institution. What does he mean? Right? He said Black's Law, he said language is a peculiar institution. Well, peculiar, we know that means we don't fit in. But institution, what are we talking about? Black's Law Dictionary definition of institution. What does that mean? What is an institution according to Black's Law Dictionary? That's that's what people are using in court. That's what you're using in the United States of America. When you go before the judge, right, they're going to be talking about all these different things. You said natural man. Do you have to say natural woman? Yeah, you can. I mean, either way, if you say, well, I guess in court, they don't do the whole, as much as people believe that they do, you got to be careful with that. In court, they don't really do the whole thing as, do you identify as a man or woman? Like you either a natural man or you're a natural woman. So yeah, I would say no matter what I'm not saying that's for you, but I'm just saying in general. I was about to say, I guess you could get away with it nowadays, but you can't because according to Black's Law Dictionary, they don't play that, right? So, but what is institution? Institution, now he's saying that language is an institution, but what does institution mean then? Institution is the commencement or inauguration of anything. It is the commencement or inauguration of what? Of anything. Language is the commencement or inauguration of anything. It's the first establishment of a law, rule, or right. So all law starts with language. You were taught that all law has to be written down, which eventually it must. But all law must start spoken, which means even before Barashit was written in the scrolls, right, or what we now call the Bible, before it was written, it had to be spoken. That's why there's universal law. Once again, what does the word universe mean? We're talking about culture, right? It's our pleasure, right? What is the word universe means? It means a verse, sentence. So the universe is a single spoken sentence. So before somebody could write it down, it had to be spoken. So you can't believe in the universe if nobody spoke it into being. You can't believe in universal law if nobody spoke the universe into being, and then you spoke laws into being to protect that which they created, that they spoke. You can't believe in universal law if it wasn't instituted, right? This is why people try to get us away from law. Universal law means there must be some type of institution. Marriage, that's why there's marital law, because marriage is an institution. That's why there's common law, because if something becomes common, it becomes instituted. That's why there's admiralty law, because things that are dealing with admiralty must be an institution. If it's not institutionalized, it cannot be law, right? So the first establishment of a law, rule, or right, etc., any custom, system, organization, etc., firmly established. He's talking about language. He said language is a peculiar institution. It's a peculiar institution that doesn't fit in with any other types of institutions. Right? And this institution, he said, it doesn't fit in. He says it's an elementary rule or principle. Right? How do you make sure you protect your rights and you don't even know how law works? I'm feeling this thing right now. Hopefully y'all are grasping this, right? It says it next says in practice. It must be practiced. If it's not practiced, it's not an institution. If you're not practicing it, it's not an institution. If you're not practicing it, it has nothing for you. If you're dating instead of being married, it has nothing for you. Uh-oh. Because marriage is an institution. He's trying to tell you, he got you to start talking about dating. Willie Lynch wasn't out here with, like, he might have been, behind the scenes doing whatever. But Willie Lynch had a wife, and he wouldn't allow you to get married. In the same Willie Lynch letter, you go back and start reading it from the beginning, just go back a few paragraphs. You'll see how they literally systematically made sure that they attacked marriage and said, we're going to get rid of black people wanting to be married, because he said the only thing that will cause, this is what he said. He basically quoted Malachi chapter 4, verse 6. He basically quoted Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 54 and so forth, right? He basically said that the anomaly that must happen to make sure that these people actually ever come out of this system of oppression. He said the only thing that we have studied, he had people that he hired to put together studies on this. He said the only thing that really is going to break them out of this is that black women start becoming wives again, and that black men start becoming husbands again. If that ever happens, they might make it out of this. There's a language. That's why it's an institution. You got to practice it. You got to practice your language. Now, if you don't practice your language at all, then how you going to talk about that you're sitting up there boycotting? Remember, we talk about unnecessary boycotts. If you practice your language, why do you need to boycott others when you can speak things that nobody else can understand? The Haitian Revolution, the reason why it popped off the way it did is because white people couldn't understand Haitian's language because they didn't want to know about it. That's why down the road, people like America. Oh, sorry, we lost TikTok. Okay, sorry about that, TikTok. Sorry, somebody trying to call. I don't know who it was, but that's why down the road we lost what we lost. Right? We lost what we lost. If you don't practice it, Haiti was still able to practice languages, even if they didn't all speak the same language. They started speaking with each other so much that they caught up on people's languages. Even if they didn't have their own religion, they said, okay, for now we'll just make Vodou the main one. And Vodou wasn't even really African Vodou. It was something that they just mixed together of all these African countries, and they called it Vodou, or what you now call Voodoo. Right? They said, hey, we need something. We need something, right? The Christian thing, they don't even allow us to really know the real deal of that, and it ain't really working. If it ain't working for them to treat us with respect, we don't want it for ourselves right now anyway. So they figured out something. They said, for right now, we'll just settle on this Vodou thing. We got to have something that's our own, right? And we're going to use that to be able to fight for ourselves. And because white men, they even had Haitians with Sambo spirits that were trying to come up to them and tell them that there was going to be a revolt. And the white people were like, yo, man, these Haitians, y'all too stupid to come up with something like that. And then on top of that, they didn't understand what was going on as far as what was being spoken right in front of them. So guess what happens? They speak the same language. They beat the brakes off them. That's how that happened. That's how that happened. So it's a peculiar institution. He said, well, we'll stop right there. We could be in the institution piece all day. I invite you to look up Black's Law Dictionary as far as the definition of institution. Hey, how you doing, Alexander? Thank you for being with us. Right? So here we go. Back to the Willie Lynch letter. So he said, language is a peculiar institution. Now, this is the next thing he says, Salah. But yeah, let's let that sit and breathe. Language is a peculiar institution. And I'm sorry, y'all, I need to get a little bit more to drink. So if you guys will allow me 30 seconds to a minute somewhere in there, if y'all want to take a little break, I promise when I come back, we're going to finish this up. But I just need a little more, speaking for a long time. And I didn't have a backup out here. So just give me a second. I promise you I'll be right back. And then we're going to jump right into this. Okay, so if you want to look this up while I'm gone, right, just for a minute at the most, I'm going to just run in, make sure I got some more to drink, and be right back. If you want to do the same, feel free to do the same real quick, right? If you want to look it up, though, look up Willie Lynch letter, Willie, Lynch, Lynch, letter, Letter, PDF. If you want to even make sure it's even more refined search, and then just go down to the second thing that will pop up on your Google search. Click on that. The second option, click on that option, and then go down to the end of page 3 where it says control the language. That's where we're going to start when we get back. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I get a little more to drink, and then we're going to be right back in this to finish up. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Be right back. All right. All right, we're getting ready to, we're going to finish strong. Hashtag finish strong, right? We're going to finish strong. All right, y'all ready? Hopefully, well, a lot of y'all stayed on. Praise y'all. All righty. A lot of times we leave up and we lose a bunch of people. Thank y'all for sticking around. Okay, here we go. All right. So, language is a peculiar institution, right? Language is a peculiar institution. He says next, it leads to the heart. Oh, yeah, we here, Deja. We out here. We out here. And, you can always look it up on YouTube for the rest, too, if you want to look it up later on or on the podcast. So he says, language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. What does the word heart mean in Hebrew once again? Heart means passion. I'm sorry, Jacques said the French rewrote history and told us voodoo gave us our independence. Yeah, right. And then therefore labeled it, since they said voodoo gave us our independence. They said since voodoo gave Haitian people independence, black people independence, therefore voodoo is a bad thing, even though voodoo wasn't even really voodoo. Voodoo was just a mix of a bunch of stuff, and it was something they used to just go ahead and congregate, right? Voodoo wasn't supposed to be a thing that was going to last forever. It was just something that they used on a particular night to say, hey, we can make a blood oath together, a blood sacrifice, if you will. And that part, blood sacrifice, that points to us anyways, right? He said, actually, Haitian Revolution is kind of scriptural, as Dessalines and others knew they were Israel. Well, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, or if you're talking about, Toussaint Louverture or Daddy Bookman or all these different people that are out there, but especially Toussaint read the Bible, and he read up on Moses. And he said, well, if Moses could do it, why can't I? Harriet Tubman, she was called what? She was called the Black Moses, or is called still, right? The Black Moses. Look at Nat Turner. Nat Turner was a preacher, one of those people that was under an overseer. And then all of a sudden he found a real Bible, said the slave Bible, and he read up on the book of Exodus and read up on Moses and said, maybe I'm supposed to be Moses. But once again, he said the language is a peculiar institution and it leads to the heart, the passion of a people. If you take away people's language, you take away what they're passionate about. I mean, think about this. He's giving you the game, your culture. If you take away how people speak and what they mean when they speak, we talked about this before. In your Bible, they'll say stuff like "and this, and that, and this, and that," and they're really saying "ought this, ought that, ought this" in our language, which is because we don't have punctuation marks in Hebrew. So when we say "ought," we're saying, hey, like this is the beginning of a new sentence. This is the new way of looking at things. This is what we're focusing on now. So we say "and" a lot still as part of our DNA memory. Now in English, "and" is supposed to be a bad way to start a sentence, but in our culture, we say "and" all the time, right? I'm getting ready to go to the store, and when I get ready to go to the store, I gotta make sure that I go visit my boy, Big Brother Thomas over there. But when I go over to the D, when I go over to the D, I gotta try and see if I can get a little bit of stuff. And it's a little cold over there right now, so maybe I'm gonna wait till the summer. And if I'm gonna wait till the summer, I might as well just spend a little bit of time, down south if I can, and try to hit up H Town real quick. And if I'm down in H Town, well, you got a few people over in H Town and Dallas in between there, and we're not right. Like we saying the same thing. It's a peculiar institution, but somebody told you that part of your institution is wrong, so you don't even think that that's a real thing. And when when your children speak like that, you say, "Oh man, that's terrible. We need to make sure that you speak correctly." They are speaking correctly. They're speaking their culture, that DNA memory, that melanin DNA, because melanin doesn't forget memory. That's why you can cut somebody's leg off. They become an amputee. And while they're sitting there, they'll still tell you at first, if they don't know their leg's been cut off. I've seen this in the military. Somebody's leg or whatever gets amputated, they don't know. And they'll tell you their leg hurts. And you looking back and you're like, but you ain't got no leg in your mind, right? And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just being real, right? You looking and you're like, but your leg, there is no leg. But they're telling you it hurts. They're writhing in pain. They think they're moving their leg back and forth. They're like, it hurts when I move it. It hurts when you move it. Melanin doesn't lose memory. Oh, even having a melanated vocabulary. I like that. But it's nice. You might need to write that down somewhere and put that in some writing somewhere. You said when writing, it irritates me to not start with "and." Now I know why. Yeah. And I'm not saying we need to start every single sentence with "and." That's our culture, though. We use that because that's what we do. Yeah, phantom sensations, all that stuff, right? You said happens to me, toe itch must not, but it's not there. Yeah, because your melanin didn't forget, right? Right? The melanin didn't forget that it's there, and the melanin still believes that it's there, and the melanin still lives with it. So the melanin's in the eternal, right? The melanin's dealing with the eternal. You're dealing in the you're dealing in the here and now. The melanin's like, oh no, eternally, like that the leg is still there. Just because you're in the present doesn't mean the melanin is in the present. Melanin is trying to do past, present, future all simultaneously. Yeah, amen. Yeah, I know Minister Select Sonia, who's a great healer, and does a lot of stuff as far as massage therapy. Yeah, she's told me that before. That yeah, you have to, that you can even massage somebody's missing, if somebody's missing, we're talking about the leg. So if somebody was missing the leg, you can actually massage the missing leg, and the person will feel it and feel soothed. You know, but anyways, getting back to language, we got to make sure we finish strong on this, right? So language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the passion, the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, hear the word usage, hear the word usage. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, hear the word usage, and the more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more they know about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. So if I learn my language, my people's language, it means that I can go through their culture more. And watch this now. When somebody tries to tell me, well, that's not how we use Hebrew, I say, well, wait a minute, that's not my culture. You're talking about modern Hebrew. You're talking about Germanic, Yiddish, and a little bit of Hebrew sprinkled in, the little bit that you know, and you're probably not even using it the way we used to use it. If I go back before yours and I learn it, even if I learn a little bit more, a little less than you do, or less than you do, and I still don't even know how to speak it fluently because nobody really speaks it fluently like that anymore, right? However, if I can get enough of it in my system, I can begin to navigate all through all levels of that Hebrew society. If I learn Kiswahili, right? Mimi ni Kofi ninafuraha kukutana na wewe. I can begin to navigate. I might not know how to say everything, but if I'm dealing with children, if I'm watching children and I need them to comprehend what I'm saying, I can say kusikiliza. I'm telling them listen. I can say kusabiri. I can say you need to calm down, right? I can introduce myself Mimi ni Kofi, right? I can give the greeting habari. If I know Ashanti Shwi, what right? I can say et descend, right? If I'm talking to somebody in Shwi and they say something about, they might not say God, but I know that if they're talking about Elohim, even though they're not talking about who I know as Elohim, their version of God is on Yom Kippur. Now, I would never worship on Yom Kippur because that's the same as Anansi. It's like a spider God, so to speak, right? So I know who that is, but when they're saying it, I know they're trying to identify with Elohim. I can navigate something. If I say Osayu, I know that I'm giving somebody a greeting in native circles. Right, certain tribes will know what I'm saying. Right, I can navigate through different levels of somebody else's society and really my own society. I can connect and now navigate through it. The problem is the language was taken, and so you're not navigating. So when you boycott, once again, these unnecessary boycotts, if you go through a boycott and you're going to go home and still not be able to navigate your own through levels of society, is the boycott functioning? Right? We're doing some unnecessary stuff. We're doing some unnecessary things. You see, you get the massage though. This is so inspiring, and I know none of what's being said. So, amen. We're glad you know it now, right? And you can study it, right? Don't just listen to me. I want you to study this stuff for yourself so you can know what I'm talking about. All right, here we go. So he says it's going to help you to go through all levels of society. It says a foreigner. He uses the word foreigner because he's going to be focused on you. He said that, remember, he said that we're dealing with these new N words and these new mixed mules, these new N words slash white folks slash black folks slash native slash, they don't even know what they are. We're going to give them so much confusing stuff that they won't know what they are. They'll just end up identifying with what we tell them to identify with. Right? Therefore, whenever there's a therefore, there's a wherefore. So he's saying, where is this? Where is this coming from? It's coming from what we just read. So because of what we just read, therefore, if the foreigner, that's supposed to be you, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, listen how he's talking about you. Listen how society's talking about you. Right? While using you, while using your labor, while talking about you need to work. Thanks, Alexander, for the agreement. While doing all these things, right? They're going to use your labor. While using your labor, right? Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, to the extent he knows the body of the language. So if the foreigner is an enemy, if the foreigner would ever say, this is not mine, and this is actually something against me, and he learns how, or she learns how to use the language of the country, so we're going to have a problem. Yeah, see, we're the foreigners, according to them. I mean, you now a lot of us are from here anyways, but they changed what the definition of an American is, which means that if you're a real American, but you're not on the little bit of American soil they gave you, then everything else belongs to this fictitious system. You can't have. There's only, remember, when it comes to land, only two types of people can own land, or only two land only belongs in two different places categories. It's either public or it's private. If you can own your own land and you then it's private, your land is allodial. That means a police officer can't come on there, and if you are definitely a private citizen all the way through with your paperwork, they can't tax you. It's illegal. It's not legal for them to do so, right? But you don't know the language of the law. But you are foreign. You are allowed to be whatever they say you are. You are foreign to the real land. You are a fictitious person. And then if we want to go into what we're talking about even a little further, then you are considered to be a black person. Here, he's using the term N-word because you ain't even a person. Remember, a black person is still not considered to be a person. You're considered to be an artificial person. All right. Therefore, if the foreigner, that's you, is an enemy of the country, what? To the extent, so you're only an enemy depending on what? You're only a threat, in other words, to the extent that he knows the body of the language. To that extent is the country, the United States Corporation now, vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. See the words he's using? I'm not using these words randomly, right? People don't want you to think about things culturally. If you don't identify with the culture, then people would just be like, oh, okay, well, whatever, right? But he's talking about if they identify with their culture, if they ever learned who they were, if they ever governed themselves by something outside of what we tell them they're supposed to govern themselves by, we have a problem. If they actually govern themselves by marriage, we have a problem. If they actually govern themselves by loving one another as Yeshua loves us, right? Or doing unto others as we want to be done unto us, or submitting to a mission and not to a man. But if the man is submitted to the mission of the Most High, then you can submit to the mission, not submit to the man. So you don't have to subman. You're in submission. As long as the mission is on point, then you get with the mission. You don't get with the man. The man is going to get older. The man's going to have great days and bad days. The man's going to mess up on the mission. But that's why even when the man messes up, you're not submitted to the man. You're not subman. You're submission. Right? You said we become a proverb according to the curses of Deuteronomy. Okay, right? So it's culture. You said took you to another level, amen. Even though you heard it before, amen. That's why we say it over and over again, because you look, if you've learned something different your whole life, then you're gonna need this to be repeated in your spirit. When you went to school, they repeated those ABCs every day, didn't they? When you went to school, they kept giving you different equations: X plus Y equals Z. Right? They keep giving you these different equations to be able to get to understand what an isosceles triangle was. All right. Okay, so here we go. Right. So the more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, now he's going to give you some examples. See, he's got to give you stipulations. He's got to box this in. He's got to box his argument in. He's boxing us in. That's what stipulations do. They're truths. They're going to box you in, right? Right? If it's not true, it's not a stipulation. So you got to give facts. He's coming before the jury. He's coming before the judge, and he's saying, okay, I got to make sure I get these stipulations to prove what I'm saying. So he's going to prove what he's saying. This is him. This is not me. This is the enemy telling you that what I'm saying is correct. What we've been teaching is correct. But the Most High, ultimately, that's the one we really need to know. This is the enemy against you, telling you what's supposed to happen. He said once they strip them of their culture, they have no control, right? Or they have control. Watch this. So he said, for example, here's an example for you. He said, here's Exhibit A. If you take a slave, right? That really would be an N-word. But if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets. Once again, the Haitians knew English, or I'm sorry, they knew French. The French didn't know the different languages of different people there. Right? So he said, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets. And he is then no more a slave. And a slave is somebody that's in debt. Somebody that's in debt is a slave. So he said, if I teach you the language, so watch this. If I teach you the language of money, and I teach you sovereignty, and I teach you how to be able to defend yourself, and you can speak, and people have to be obedient to that which you speak because you are the master and they're the public servant. And as long as you speak correctly, then guess what? He's saying that you're no longer a slave. You're no longer in debt. Therefore, the foreigner is an enemy of the country to the extent that he knows the body of language, to the extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, because he's supposed to be foreign, he's supposed to have a language of his own. All right? He's supposed to have a language of his own. If you teach him all about your language, though, he will know all your secrets, and he is then no more a slave. For you can't fool him any longer. He can't be a fool anymore. Yeah, he said teaching us their language gave us their thinking, right? Okay, so watch this. So for example, he says Exhibit B. Here's another example. He says, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops, and the slavery system would break down. For he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. Did y'all catch that? Let me read that again. Here's Exhibit B. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops, and the slavery system would break down, for he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So, this is what he says. So, you have to be careful in setting up the new language, for the slaves would soon be in your house, talking to you man to man. We're not supposed to talk to them man to man, woman to woman, man to woman, person to person, human to human. Right? So he says, if you're not careful, they would come into your house and they start trying to talk to you like human beings, man to man, and that is death to what? Here's the key. It's death to our economic system. The economy is based off of you not being in your culture and you not even be able to speak properly within theirs. All right? Once again, what is the definition of capitalism? Do a Google search if you would like to, right? A Google search on the definition of capitalism. Capitalism is defined as a system in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry. That trade and industry, or that control over trade and industry, is wielded by private corporations, and the private corporations wield that power rather than the state. That means that the state, the government, they bow down to the private. If you, therefore, become private and know what that means, they have to bow down to you. right? Know how to be in the system of capitalism, but we don't have to be of it. Our culture does not have to be of it. When I deal with you, I deal with you in your culture. I will respect certain things. I'll render Caesar's things to Caesar's, but Elohim's things to Elohim. My culture is always intact. And you have a lot of people who are not culturally suited for what they're trying to do. Minister Sammer said the system falls once we realize we are enslaved under their system, right? You're recognizing that you have a culture that is different and one that is greater. And then on top of that, saying, I also know how to not only um, I also know your culture, but I also know how to navigate it by speaking the code. I know your coded language. I know that black is considered to be artificial. I know that a human being is considered to be a monster. I know that slavery is debt and debt is slavery. I know that I'm protected by UCC 1-308. I know that you can be dishonorable in the contract. I know that if you are a judge and you're doing what you're supposed to do or not doing what you're supposed to do, I can come against you. I know these things. Since I know these things, I'm in a position where I can start telling you again, I can navigate through it. And they realize that. So their whole goal is to keep you underneath. He said, I get it, Pastor. I hear you. See the service, learn their language, and victory to overcome. Amen. Right? So that's why we're talking about this stuff, right? That's why we're talking about even with YLP 83, we're not going to be like other people who've done this. We're going to be a micronation. We're going to be under a religious sect. We're going to make sure that even people who are trying to invest in us, that they're going to have to fall in line with certain things, or else we're not going to do business with them. Right? We're going to have to do those things. Everything is about being able to make sure that you have your own. And like I said, I'm excited when we have our next YLP 83 meeting. We got a lot of great news that just came up. Now we're still navigating through it, but we have a lot of great news for some possibilities that are coming up, right? We're going to stay committed. So keep on sowing, keep on doing what you're doing. Amen. Right. But you have to make sure that it's there, right? You have to set up, right? Because if you have to be able to navigate through other people's stuff. When you set up your stuff, if somebody comes in your stuff and says, oh, well, I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't like this. Well, can you be able to navigate and say, look, well, first of all, this is ours. Can you tell them through the proper language? This is ours. It's not yours. Can you tell them through the proper standards? This is our stand, or through the proper words. This is our standard. You said you packing now. Amen. Packing in faith. I see you. Right. This is our standard. I'm not tripping off of your standard. You can have your standard, but when you come on this property, right? Like if somebody comes over your house, look, bro, I love you and everything, Kofi, but when you come over my house, I might let you stay here for a couple of days, but I'm just gonna let you know, like, here, you can have freedom to do this and liberty to do this, but this is my house. If you do this, this, and this, we gonna have a problem. Right? Like that's what they're saying. Okay. So yes, here we are. I'm sorry. Okay. So here's the next part. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. What did he say? He said values, culture, values. What's there? Values. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. Your virtues that you like to talk about, they come through your language. Right now, we know communication, only 7% of it is verbal, never, right? But even some of your nonverbal stuff. You know, there's a reason why people sit with their legs crossed over, one leg crossed over the other. That's a cultural thing. Did you know that? And it comes from a place where people don't eat in a certain way. And so because they can't control their bowels the way they need to, and because they don't digest food correctly, people of certain cultures cross their legs. Like that's where that came from. That's where that practice started from. A lot of people don't know this. We don't even think about it. Everything you're doing, it happens for a reason. It comes out of a culture. It's a manifestation, right? So virtues and values, if you will, that's the term he uses. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. A total society has many interconnected values in their system. However, all the values in the society have bridges of language to connect them for orderly working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife or civil war. So people speak different, people want different things, people have different values or whatever. And so there's bridges that we have out here to be able to make sure that a lot of different values are represented. You got to, right? You said, wait, what? Repeat leg crosses. So he said a total society has many interconnected values in the system, or has a many interconnected value system. All the values in the society have bridges of language to connect them for orderly working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife or civil war. The degree of the conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, so you're gonna make an example once again though. Now he says this is exhibit C. So just in case, he said, for example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean, or the same hog pen and make a slip and incorporate something in his language whereby he comes to value a house more than he does his hog pen. You got a problem. He will soon be in your house. He's telling us that they got you in the proverbial hog pen, right? We're talking about the Willie Lynch. This is the Willie Lynch letter, right? Willie Lynch speech, really, but the Willie Lynch letter. And he's telling us straight up that we want you in the hog pen. We want them in the hog pen. We want them to not worry about themselves, where they come from, all these different things like that. He said we got a problem if they begin to believe they exist out the hog pen. But he said all we got to do is use language. He said we keep saying it's your hog pen. We keep saying your house. We keep saying your environment. We keep saying this is, we keep equating him to a hog. We keep saying animals stay here, this and that or whatever. But he said basically saying, look, if you ever slip up and come to that person that you put in the hog pen and you tell them, hey, I'm going back to the house, this and that or whatever. It's a nice house that you got here. And the person says, yeah, we both have nice houses or whatever. It's good that people can live in houses. And you say, well, yeah, people do live in houses, but you live in a hog pen. You messed up because you introduced to him something in his language that makes him go, wait a minute. Did he just say that people live in houses, but he says, but you live in a hog pen? And I said people by accident, but he didn't correct me. Right? Then he has, even if it doesn't click then, something starts to weigh on him to where, am I supposed to live in the hog pen? Am I supposed to eat slop? Am I supposed to do right? But you'll live in the hog pen as long as somebody keeps giving you a language that says that, hey, your hog pen is the same thing as my house. You deserve your hog pen. Be excited about it. You'll have people that say stuff like, I don't need all that and everything. I'm not saying we should not be minimalist or something like that if you are. What I'm saying though is you got a lot of people that talk like that, don't you? Well, black folk don't really need all that anyway. We survived for years without all that. We don't really need, you talking about land and all that. I'm fine. My apartment, it gets the job done. You talking about stuff. I don't need to be bothered by all that. I'm a good God-fearing man, a good God-fearing woman. I've been paying taxes my whole life. I've been doing it. Everything's fine. You talking about all that stuff. I mean, it sounds well and everything, but I don't need all that. I'm fine. My chilling is fine. Everything, we don't need anything. I mean, that's how we be sounding sometimes. My chilling is fine, and we ain't never had to go through nothing. And Master been good to us. The government's been good to us. I ain't never dealt with the police like that. They talk about the police officers. I ain't never been beat by the police and this and that or whatever. So maybe if they just acted right, maybe if they just acted like they were supposed to act. I'm exaggerating the speech. However, I want you to get you to see that's what a lot of people sound like. And be excited about it. I'm just being real, right? They talk so all this stuff and everything, about voting rights and everything like that. But it's fine. I'm fine. Ain't nobody ever done nothing that's taking food out of my mouth. I ain't missing no meals. You ain't heard nobody say I ain't never missed no meals. And they talking about it, but it can't be something that affects all black people if I ain't never gone through it like that. Think about the language that person is using. You said some Christians sound like that, right? Think about the language that they're using. He's telling you a peculiar institution called language. You're talking culture. You're speaking culture. Somebody told you that you ain't supposed to. That basically like, oh yeah, you're just repeating something that somebody told you. That's all. You know, I've heard lots of people talk about all this stuff or whatever, but stuff's got to be getting better. I mean, we just had Barack Obama, and now we got this Kamala Harris. She gonna bring things into position, and she gonna make sure that we get what we supposed to. And I heard them talking about reparations. They talking about reparations, then they must do good there. I mean, Joe Biden told us if we don't vote for him, then we ain't black, so we might as well vote for him to make sure we prove how black we is. I'm exaggerating the language, but I want you to comprehend. Like, this is what he's thinking when he's writing this out. He said, I want people to repeat this stuff. They're going to repeat it on their own. This is a system. We made this systematically so that it would systemically continue to be in order. We don't have to do anything but just drop it. He said, and if you read higher up, I think it's on page 1 of the Willie Lynch letter, either page 1 or page 2, but he says, if we put this in order and we're diligent with putting this in order and keeping this here, he said, keeping this here for 1 year. He said, if we can be faithful to this, thank you, Mika, and how you doing, right? He said, if we can be faithful and keep this in order for 1 year, he said, that's all we need is 1 year. He said, they'll do this for 300 years plus. He said, shoot, I estimate it might happen for thousands of years, but he said, at least 300 years, they'll do this. Like, he didn't pull any punches. Now, that was 1712 when it was written. In 1712, it was written. And when? In 1712. So you're talking from 1712 to 1912 is 200 years, to 2012 is 300 years. You in 2022, 310 years. Tell me if people still speaking like that in this peculiar institution called language. Are people still talking about, we're Americans, we're in the United States too, give us what we want, give us what we need? Not, we're going to take and make sure that we have our own, and we're going to give it like-minded people. We're going to make sure that Israel is sealed. We're going to make sure that we can deal with those that want to be grafted in. No. We're not talking like that. We still talking about, give us our piece of the pie. I don't need your piece of the pie. Malcolm X, going back to him, we brought him up a lot today. Malcolm X, and we're going to get ready to take our leave on this one because we're over the 3-hour mark now. But Malcolm X made it the point to say it like this. Right, or we're coming up on it really technically, but we're supposed to start at 8. Malcolm X says straight up, look, he said, if you have to ask your enemy for a job, he said, you in bad shape. If you got to depend on the people that hate you to be able to fund you, you're in bad shape. Yeah, And okay, I was just looking through. It looked like y'all were having a conversation about if I was making fun of somebody. Like I said, I'm not making fun of anybody. I want you to see that's how our ancestors sounded. They would have been saying the same stuff, and now here we are today saying the same stuff. That was my point, right? I can see if somebody would be offended by that, but sometimes this stuff is offensive. We're talking about somebody who was putting together a system to be against our people, right? So at the end of the day, right? Whoever somebody might say it. He definitely gave a speech on Christmas or around Christmas, right? Because he starts off by talking about Christmas and basically saying Merry Christmas, everybody, right? So you're still talking about culture, and I want you to comprehend it. It's like this. How about I say it like this, right? Because I don't want any confusion, and we don't need to be arguing and stuff anyways. The main thing is the main thing. If somebody didn't like the way that I said it, hey, it is what it is. I told you what my intent is. If it's offensive, hey, I get it. um what I'm going to say like this, we'll end like this. A lot of you guys have heard me say this before. Some of you guys might be newer, so you maybe never heard me say this, at least not in this way. But let's do this again, right? Here's an example for you of how people are saying the same thing over and over and over again. And it's not making fun of anybody. It's telling you what is, right? That these people are literally doing the same thing over and over again and don't realize that they're keeping in the same place, right? Right? Okay, y'all ready for this? Here we go. There was a couple. Right, some of you guys will already know where I'm going, but there's a couple, and this couple Because I didn't want to say Baptist sound like this. I didn't want to say Methodist sound like this. I didn't want to say any of that, right? If somebody's taking it that way, you might want to check and see why the offense is there. Maybe it could be in the presentation you didn't like the homiletical or hermeneutical or apologetic way that it was being said, right? Really more homiletical than anything else, right? So if I if you feel like my words weren't seasoned with salt, I ask for forgiveness for that. But it was my intent is not something I'm asking for forgiveness on that. But I can see how my words could be misconstrued because maybe I didn't put the words in proper place. Right? Language is a peculiar institution. See, so if I use it to be able to get a point across, somebody would say, "Oh, you're wrong," this and that, right? But we might watch a movie we might watch a movie, right, where Brad Pitt, or watch a movie where, oh, thank you, Miko, where Leonardo DiCaprio might come out here and they might say some of the most foul stuff ever. And you'll say, well, that's okay. They were just trying to get a point across. When it's not okay that they would say that, right? But because we're into drama and things like that, right? So, but I'm not mad at anybody frustrated, and I don't want us going against each other because that's not what the main thing is, right? So let me say it like this: if we can't accept that, and thank you for even questioning it or whatever, thank you for letting me know what your thought process is on it, and I want to say I appreciate it. you know well, I don't think that she necessarily agrees with Christianity per se, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think because her point of view, I think she's just trying to say maybe she feels like I'm bullying somebody, right? So let me just say it like this, right? Let me say it like this, okay? um and You said you're not a Hebrew Israelite. You don't have any titles. I'm not a Hebrew. I'm an Israelite that happens to be Hebrew, that happens to be black. But somebody who told you Hebrew Israelites or black Hebrew Israelites, that was something started by white people either. You say you don't have any titles. I mean, that's fine. The people in the Bible had titles. I don't think we need to go there. Like, you see what I'm saying? We're doing the thing where separation because of language. In the language I was speaking, I didn't once say that somebody's evil just because they go to church or something. And now we're all arguing. See what I'm saying? We have to be careful about stuff that we're doing, right? So it's not about trying to say somebody's wrong, right, this and that or whatever. I'm just giving contextual facts, and I know this, right? By the way, Luke chapter 12 verse 51 through 53, that's probably more important than any of the stuff we're talking about, because you'll find out when there's truth, we're not supposed to necessarily always agree or get along, right? But we should try and keep the main thing the main thing. Nevertheless, we're getting away from it. I appreciate everybody on here, no matter what. Thank you, moderators, for doing what you do. I just want to make it a point, because some people get so messed up in this that now all the stuff we've been talking about for hours might basically get lost, right? Because you didn't like the way something was said, right? So check this out, because and all the stuff in titles and all the stuff, whatever. Sure, I'm a pastor, but that's a low key shot, right? We don't have to do all that. It's like, I don't have titles. I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. I'm not a this. I'm not a Christian or whatever. I mean, okay. It's not that we get into a place where we can't even listen to each other. We're being polite in our dismissal of each other, but we're still dismissing each other. That's what the enemy wants at the end of the day, right? You know, but you said Luke chapter 12, starting at verse 51, verses 51 through 53, right? Yahshua speaking there. He says, basically, do you think I came that everybody would be at peace? He said, I came to basically give the truth. And he said, the truth is going to cause mother to be against daughter, and father to be against son, and mother-in-law to be against daughter-in-law, and father-in-law to be against son-in-law, right? So truth creates freedom, but it also is going to cause some people to be upset with what they're hearing, right? Um, so I get it, right? You look at Matthew chapter 15. The people said, why don't you deal with the traditions? Why do you say stuff different? Why do you come against us? Why don't you say it the way that it's pleasing and that our fathers would say it? And he said, like, it's not. He said, everything that my father didn't plant is for me to uproot. And all that, and that's the interesting thing too, because you got to be careful. You'll hear that, right? So I don't put titles on anybody. I don't need a title. I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. Well, time out. Okay, well, if you're trying to do that for real, you're trying to say I'm the same dude that's on the corner who's cussing people out. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the dude that's out there calling black people the N-word and white people crackers and all that. No, I don't agree with none of that, right? So, I'm just saying we got to be careful. Nobody said that you are. Once again, I don't think any. See, that's what I'm saying. You're saying somebody said you're evil. I don't think anybody said you're evil. I know I didn't. Now you might feel like, because there's people that disagree with you, and it's probably you're not the majority. that everybody's coming against, but the love is there, right? I'm not in here to tell anybody, that they're equal, right? I'm not here to say that about anybody, and I'm just making the point to say that, take that with that what you will. But once again, let's make sure that we in correctly, right? Because I never said anybody in here was evil. I've never once said that. I never once said that if you're a Christian, it automatically means that you agree with everything that I'm saying, everything that's against what I'm saying. Maybe somebody else did say that. I didn't catch that, but maybe somebody else did. But the moderators try to be pretty much across the board. So, nevertheless, let's say it like this, right? Thank you, Holy Spirit, for that. We try to keep the main thing, and if we mess this up, we keep arguing, going back and forth. We miss what the Most High has for us, anyways, right? And that's really what we should be about. So I'm going to say it like this. This is the last thing. Once again, some of you've heard me say this, some of you have not said this and that, or whatever. Let me go back to a tried and true saying, or something as far as apologetics and homiletics that you'll be able to use to paint a picture real quick, and then we'll go ahead and take our leave. Okay. There was a couple. There was a husband and there was a wife. The husband and the wife got together and they married or whatever, and the wife begins to cook for the couple, and she makes chicken, right? She makes chicken every night. It's our pleasure, Alexander. She makes chicken every night, right? And the chicken is great. There's a problem though. As great as the chicken is great, but there's a problem in his mind, because the chicken tastes great and everything, but she keeps cutting the chicken in half every time she makes it, right? So, okay, well, I guess the conversation is going to go on. I'm trying to say it in a different manner, but I guess the argument's going to keep going on in the comment section. But prayerfully, you can hear this as we get ready to take our leave, and then maybe, hopefully, tomorrow when you come back over with this, things will be better. But anyways, he says, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so there's a chicken and it's cut in half. So he asked his wife. He says, "Babe, question for you. When you make this chicken for us, you always cut the chicken in half, right?" He says, when you make this chicken for us, you all cut this chicken in half, right? All right. So he said, when you make this chicken for us, we all cut this chicken in half, right? And so and so he says, "Why do you do that?" She says, "I don't know. I do it because my mama did it." Right. So he says, "Okay, cool." They get together. They got a family situation going on. All right. Everybody's coming over their house. So they come over, and mama's coming over, right? His wife's mother. So he says, "Cool." She said that she does it because her mama did it, so I'm gonna ask her mama. So they get together. The women do their thing in the kitchen. The brothers are watching the game. He gets up real quick. He says, "Hey, mama, question for you. Your daughter, when she makes the chicken, she always cuts it in half. I asked her why she does it. She says she doesn't know why she does it, right? And she said it's because you said it, or you did it. She watched you do it. She cooks like you cook, right?" So he says, "Why do you cut the chicken in half?" She says, "I don't know, son. I do it because my mama did that with her chicken." So they're in a great position because Thanksgiving is coming up. So they go over the house for Thanksgiving. And yeah, a lot of people do turkey, but they also do a chicken. They got the chicken in there. Chicken's cut in half. So the women are in the kitchen doing their thing. The brothers are watching the game. He gets up during the game. He says, "Hey, mama, right? Or big mama." He said, "Big mama, I was talking. I see whenever your daughter cooks, she cuts the chicken in half. I asked mama why she cut the chicken in half. Mama said, or I'm sorry, I asked your daughter why she cut the chicken in half. She said, I don't know. Ask mama. I asked mama why she cut the chicken in half. Mama said, I don't know. Ask big mama. So I'm asking you, right? Or basically she learned it from you. So hey, I'm asking you, right? Why do you cut the chicken in half? Right? Why do you cut the chicken in half? Right? She says, I don't know. Right? I just do it because my mama did it. Right? But they're in a blessed situation because, here comes Christmas or whatever, right? So they're getting ready for Christmas and they all come together. And then, I know we don't do Christmas, but just for the sake of of what we're talking about, right? For the sake of this work. So here comes Christmas. And guess what? Medea gonna be there. So, so he's like, okay, I'm gonna ask Medea when we get there. So there they are, watching the game, man over here, the women in the kitchen or whatever. And so he gets up during the game again. He says, Medea, with all due respect, I'm sorry to come at you the way I am, but I'm a little frustrated. I see that whenever y'all make chicken, y'all cut it in half. I saw my wife did it, and I asked her why she did it. She said she don't know. Ask Mama. I asked Mama why she did it. She said she don't know. Ask Big Mama. I asked Big Mama why she did it. She said she don't know. Ask Medea. So fine. So I'm asking you, Medea, can you tell me why y'all cut the chicken in half? And Medea said, "Oh, baby, that's simple. In my day, we just cut the chicken in half because we didn't have a big enough stove. Now that we have a big enough stove, you don't really need to do it, but that's why I did it." And everybody was continuing something down a path that was passed down generation to generation, language to language, culture to culture, right? Simply because of whatever. And so my point and what I was saying is it's the same thing that we're passing on, right? Is that people are using these terms, people are using these things. People are talking about stuff like ask Jesus and coming on here with 3 check marks, right? To make sure that we don't, that we have to make sure that what they want culturally is applied, even though it's not even our culture, it's not even biblical culture, right? People are coming out here to do these things, is what I'm saying. It's simply due to the fact, like even the stuff where it gets like testy or touchy or people get irritated or whatever with people, we're doing these things because somebody told us these things, not because that they're needed, not because it was ever needed, by the way, because guess what? You still could have had other ways of making the chicken and keeping it whole, right? But if you're somebody that could only afford, like, what was their standard for their stove because of their situation they had been placed in, you have to cut the chicken in half. And so even though you don't have to do it anymore because now you can, because it's more affordable to be able to get something bigger, somebody else has an even bigger stove than you do, so they can put 3/4 chickens in some of them, right? But because you can fit a chicken in there, you think you're doing big things, right? But there's somebody else, right? So it keeps getting there relative, right? But what I'm trying to say is that we're doing a lot of things that we're doing. We're saying a lot of things that we're saying. We're acting in a lot of things we're acting. We're communicating a lot of things we're communicating. We're praising a lot of things we're praising. We're fighting for a lot of things we're fighting for. Remember, we're not supposed to fight against each other, but Willie Lynch caused us to do so, right? He created the new mule, right? Go back and read the whole Willie Lynch letter. You'll discover from the beginning, right? That he says, hey, there's tons of things that we can get Black people to be against one another on. First is age. He says, it's not the most important thing, but he says, I'm going to start with it just simply because it starts with the letter A. Right. So he says you can get them on age, you can get them on colorism, you can get them on husband against wife, you can get them on older male against younger male, older female against younger female, the plantation, which plantation they rep. Yo, I rep New York. Yo, well, which part of New York? Well, we the Bronx. Well, we Staten Island out here, man. Staten Island trash, but Bronx ain't nothing, man. We Brooklyn over here, right? Like there's certain things that were passed down generationally, generational curses that we're continuing to utilize, not realizing that they were put there and institution on purpose. The language that you're speaking, the place that you rep, all this stuff you're doing because somebody institutionalized it in your people. And they did it on purpose to get you to what? Remember the beginning of it. Communication. Remember the beginning was that he said, after we've crossbred these people, he said, for further severance of their original beginning, that means the principality, the principle, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. He said, for further severance of their principles, their principalities, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue in both the new N-word and the new mule and institute a new language that involves the new life's work of both. They're trying to get you to speak against your origins or against your principles, right? They're trying to do these things. Thank you, moderators. Appreciate you. Right? They're trying to get you to go against your origin and your culture. They're doing that purposefully. Why? They're doing that because, and by the way, even the person that just got muted, that their thing said Black Lives Matter. They're supposed to be for Black lives and supposed to see if we can represent as a culture. But what's the first thing they come on? Hey, Black Lives Matter don't mean anything unless you identify with Jesus. It better be Jesus or nothing else, right? That's fine if that's your belief, but why is it that your belief gets to supersede mine? And why is it that you're telling me that I have to get away from the principle, the principality, the original beginning? You, by saying Black Lives Matter, you don't even recognizing that you're dealing with somebody who is trying to severance me from my principle. You don't even realize that Black Lives Matter, the pyramid that they teach in schools once a year, they have 13 principles. All 13 of them are really geared to be LGBTQ plus, and that the 4 of the 13, so 11 of them don't even, I'm sorry, 9 of them don't even deal with this, but the 4 that are left over that say like, well, the black woman or black family, things like that, it'll start off by saying, well, black women need to be protected. However, there are many types of women. Black families are important, but there are many types of families. They immediately cancel out whatever the culture is because they're attacking what? The principality. They're attacking what? The principality. They're attacking what? The principality. You see what I'm saying? Crossbreeding completed for further severance from their original beginning. We must completely annihilate the mother tongue of both the new N-word and the new mule and institute a new language that involves a new life's work of both. That's straight up. That's once again, but people don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that this language was changed. People don't want to talk about that Jesus didn't even exist. Nobody was caring about Jesus because Jesus didn't exist. Yahshua did though, right? People don't want to talk about the fact that God is something that they knew was a Germanic deity, and unless you were pagan, you weren't even concerned about God. But Elohim mattered, right? People don't want to have that conversation. That's real though. People are upset because I'm telling you, the language controls your culture. It's a peculiar institution. We went over the definition of institution already. I'm not going to bother with that anymore. Anyways, thank you all. We appreciate you. You know, at this point, prayerfully, you guys were able to get what we were trying to get out there to you. We're thankful and grateful for everybody on all these platforms that we were on today, whether it be on YouTube, whether it was on the podcast, whether it was on Facebook. Facebook, I know we got on late, but prayerfully, you guys will be able to see some of that later if you missed it earlier. Whether you got on TikTok, we're thankful and grateful for all of you. Even if you miss, I'm thankful and grateful for everybody. Even if you are somebody that's got a little whatever, and once again on both sides, whether you're with us or against us or however you want to look at it, we really, the main thing should be the main thing. Prayerfully we get back to a place where we comprehend and realize and recognize like that's part of what we do. That's part of what's going on. Thank you, Bounty. That's part of the things that are going on with us. Today is that we are purposefully taken away from culture, and so here we are having unnecessary boycotts where we're boycotting each other. Right at the end of the day, lesson being given, we boycott each other. I don't like this. I don't like before anything else, before anybody else. Like, let's not boycott each other. Let's not boycott each other. Right? I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say because I don't like this. I don't like. Let's not boycott each other. For what? Right? Let's not boycott each other. And I love, and guess what? I have love for everybody on here, even if you disagree, whatever. Right? It's Yashva. Some people say Yashva because they can't pronounce Yashva, and they don't even know how to write it up Hebrew a lot of times too. Some people say Yeshua. Some people say Yahavashai. Some people say Yahavashai, right, etc. But Yashva, Yah, Y-A-H, Shvai, S-H-V-I. Shvai literally means to cry out to the Most High. Yah is short for Yahweh, so to cry out to Yahweh. That's why it says anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord or of Yahshua, right, shall be saved. Literally, if you cry out, call out to his name, if you cry out to Yahweh, you shall be saved. The word name is Shem. Shem means authority. So anybody who cries out to Yahshua Shem or Shem Yahshua, right, shall be sozo. You shall be saved. You shall come into relationship. You shall be rescued. Right? But how can you be rescued if you don't believe? Right? How can you believe if you haven't heard? How can you hear if it's not from somebody who's going to proclaim it to you? How can somebody proclaim it to you if they're not actually stamped of approval from the Most High? Well, once again, I said that so you said I'm confusing you, so let me say it again. So Yahshua is Yahshvi. People come up with a lot of other names basically because they can't pronounce the name. They're going off of somebody else's language or whatever. Right? So Yahshua is the name. Yahshvi. Shvi, Shvi means to cry out to. Yah is short for Yahweh. So Yahshvi, Yashvi, cry out to Yahweh. Now, other people use other names that I mentioned because either they don't know how to pronounce it, or sometimes we get into a place to where, just like somebody says, you know, says, hey, how are you all doing? Somebody else goes somewhere, they say, hey, y'all, right? We know what you mean. So sometimes it's just something as simple as that. But if you're talking about Paleo Hebrew character by Hebrew character, we do have a Hebrew characters course as well. But sometimes we write it out depending on what we're doing and where we are, how we're led. But we do have things. If you look at some of our recordings, we do have places where we've actually written it out. I think we even have it on Patreon as well. But we do have places on YouTube and stuff where we've written it out in the past. But basically, you have Yahshvi, Yashvi. All right. Um, You said, is it Hebrew or Yiddish? Well, Yiddish people don't say Yashua. In Yiddish, they really don't even, they're more Greek sounding than anything else when they say it. But, they would possibly say Yeshua, I think. More than likely, they would say Yeshua. But Yiddish is, when you're talking modern Hebrew, you're talking Yiddish, Germanic, and a little bit of Paleo Hebrew. We're talking about straight up Paleo Hebrew, what it would have been written as. You said you like Yeshua better? Yeah, if you like it, you can like it better. You can say whatever you want. If you're going off of the actual characters, that we don't have a oo sound. See what I'm saying? So that's some of the stuff as far as we're talking about culture, right? So somebody would say, in the kingdom, this is what the culture is, right? So like some people would be like, oh, okay, but if you look at the characters, we don't have a oo sound and we don't have a what sound. So a lot of people who are doing like Yahweh, right? Like I used to say Yahweh because that's all I knew. And then it was Yahweh because I actually knew you were supposed to pronounce that H, and there weren't really vowels. And then you actually start getting into the characters. You start going, oh, they don't have a sound for that. So people do whatever they want. But the oo sound comes from the Greek translation where somebody was trying to take something and say, we don't have a character that matches that. So we'll just throw this oo sound in there. So you'll get people that are like Yeshua or Yeshua, but there is no oo. So you can say it, but it's not his name. Like you can say it, and I get what you mean. You know what I'm saying? But if you were to say what is it that when the angel came down and said this is what you will call him, his name would have been Yod, Yah, He, Ha, Shin, Sha, Vav, Va, and Ayin, I, Yashfu, Yashvai, Yashvai. If anything, if you wanted to do it, even though you're not supposed to really, but if anything, you could have said like Yashvai, like Yashvai, Yachshafa'ai, right? But there is no right? Because it's not an aleph at the end. The sound comes from an aleph. There's no aleph in his name. Now you might not know what I'm saying, but I'm trying to tell you, like, as somebody who teaches it and has been taught it and had to write out every word in the Bible. And the one apostle that I had, she had me write out every word in Greek and every word in Hebrew in the Bible, right? Um, you know, and that was just to open me up. I'm just trying to give you a heads up, right? So you can say, once again, you can say whatever. That just gets to a place of culturally. So that's what we were talking about culturally. There are going to be people who are going to say, oh yeah, I respect the kingdom. I have my beliefs. I have the right to believe whatever. Yeah, you do. You have the right to believe whatever, right? But then you say, well, what's his name? And it's like, well, in Hebrew, his name would be Yashvai, right? Yashvai, right? Like it wouldn't be like that's his name. And somebody will say, yeah, that sounds good and everything, but I like this one. I'm not coming against you. I'm just trying to say you got to think about that mindset. If you know that this is actually his name, but you would still say I like that, or somebody who would say I like Jesus, or I like Yesus, or I like Yesu, and they don't even know that Jesus or Yesus or Yesu is actually saying half man, half Zeus. Different culture. But they'll say, well, at the name of Jesus. Well, why would he be half man, half Zeus? Do you worship Zeus or do you worship the Most High? Do you worship a god, or do you worship a deist or a deity, or do you worship Elohim? It's not to come against anybody. People go, you're coming against us. I'm not evil. No, it's not saying evil. It's just saying like recognize the mindset, recognize the culture. If you're saying I see what your culture says, I just don't want to do what your culture says, then that's what you do. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you say, I see what your culture is, I just want to do something different, then say that. And that's cool, by the way. Like say that and we'll do that, right? Yeah, that's fine. So if you're saying like, hey, I want you to tell me in your culture what you mean. If I want you to tell me what when Moses said, like, you know what I'm saying? Because the name Yashvai, Jesus is not the first person to carry that name, right? So at the time of Moses, when he looked at Joshua, his name would have been Yashvai too. Like Christ is the second Yashvai because Moses represents getting us to a certain place, and then Yashvai is going to take that same thing, but also take that same thing into the land flowing with milk and honey, right? Well, here comes the law of Moses, if you will, and it's going to get us to a certain place, but it's not the door into the kingdom. So here comes Yashvai. He's going to take that same law and use it to be able to take us into the same place, right? So that's fine, and I'm happy you said it that way because that's the way we need to recognize it as. That's the way we need to comprehend it as. That's the way we need to understand it. It's like, hey, so if we have a conversation from the end, we can basically easily say, okay, look, I know that this is what it is, right? Like I know this is what the Bible actually says when they say in His name. I just don't like it, or I just don't trust it, or I just don't want to believe it, or I want to believe what somebody else writes out. Like any of that is fine. You have the right to do any of those things. So when we come here, though, that's what you're doing. Also recognize that you're coming to a place where this is our culture, and so we're just simply going to say this is what we believe. You have every right to believe different. See, like, and so that's why I say to put me in the same boat with somebody else would just be like somebody Hebrew, this and that, or whatever, right? And you should study everything, right? Now, here's my question to you, though. Where are you going to study? That's my question. Who are you going to study? Are you going to look up a place? Like, which Bible are you going to where they're going to make sure that they actually write out what you call, instead of Matthew, Yahav, and Yohanan and all that, you're going to say Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. When you go look up Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who's going to teach you how it is as far as in the Greek? Do you know how to read a 1611 King James Version correctly? Right? Are you going to realize that, wait a minute, it wasn't even written in the Greek, it was written in Hebrew? Do you know how to therefore figure out what it's saying in Hebrew? So that's all I'm saying. But at the end of the day, study to show yourself approved. Everybody doesn't have to agree. I think that was a great way to be able to show us, we're using a lot of stuff. We're talking about a lot of things. We're asking a lot of things. And a lot of times it's not coming from proper. So, but that doesn't mean that we hate anybody, that I have any hate. And by the way, don't forget, this is something that Malcolm X taught us as we get ready to close and get back to or take our leave, right? Malcolm X taught us specifically, right? He taught us specifically, so were so were some of you, or such were some of you, right? Such were some of you. Don't forget, right? We can't get so built up on stuff on either side of this stuff that we're talking about. We can't get so built up on this stuff that we forget that many of us didn't know a lot of stuff either, on both sides, right? So for the side that's like, well, you guys are just saying stuff and you were coming against blah blah and all this stuff, and I need to defend myself and where I am and let you know where I am, and I'm not anti what you guys are saying. Like, don't forget that there's times that you've been the person that probably was antagonistic in that point of view, and those of us who are saying, man, this is our culture, blah blah, this and that. Don't forget there was times where we didn't know these names and stuff either, right? So we praise the Most High for it all. I thank you, moderators, though. I know you guys are doing an amazing thing, and thank you for your patience. Thank you for I believe it's Sister Tamika, I can't remember, but thank you for being on here and your questions, your comments, concerns, and prayerfully, you'll not, prayerfully you'll study them as is, study them as this is exactly what they said versus, this is what somebody else is trying to tell you about it, etc. However, we're thankful and grateful for the opportunity to be in front of you again. I'll be back on this evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, New York time. Ladies, don't forget that tomorrow you're going to have the women's meeting, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, New York time. I give all praise to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim, who is or it is in, and we're thankful for his authority. Shem Yahweh, Abba, at Shem Yashva HaMashiach, at Shem Ravah HaKodesh. We're thankful for everybody for listening in, tuning in. We're thankful for even the conversation back and forth. We appreciate you all. Don't forget as well, starting on March the 4th, at 7 a.m. Eastern New York time, we will have this stuff sent out to you guys. I'm going to make sure I speak to those who are giving, or I get in the group text with those who send out the information to everybody for us. We are going to make sure starting then, Minister Nice is ready to go as far as leading us in our prayer. And that's going to be on Thursdays, every Thursday at 7 a.m. Eastern New York time. For those who want to get up early with us for prayer, you can go ahead and do so. So we're thankful and grateful and appreciative of everybody for being on. And we're excited for that. So we'll have that information. That's going to be via free conference call. So those who want to get on the conference call line, we're not going to record it or anything. So if you want to make your prayer request known, it's not going to be recorded or anything. You just get on there, and make your request known. And we're excited about that. But yeah, sisters, don't forget tomorrow. Also, don't forget those of you who want to be part of the podcast for the Shabbat Shalom podcast. That'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern New York time tomorrow. We're excited about that. Might have one of the other ministers teaching on that. Might not. We'll see. Got to get in touch with somebody tonight and check that out. So thank you guys. We appreciate you. We're excited. And if you want to, if you have any further questions, comments, or concerns, just simply connect with us. It's that simple. Just connect with us, ask the questions, get in touch with us. We have our information. If you're on YouTube, in the description box. If you're on Facebook, it's in the description box. If you watch the podcast or if you want to listen to the podcast, we put our information in the description box. If you're on TikTok, you can see it above my head right now. We're thankful and grateful to everybody for being on today. We appreciate you, and we hope that you guys have an awesome and amazing and outstanding, creative, faith-filled day, and you are fulfilled, not just filled, but fulfilled, and we're excited for you. We thank you. We appreciate you. So that's all that I really have for you all today, and as always, we give all honor and praise to the Most High for my wife, the Honorable Maya. You can check her out at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And the tincture of the month is still mucus detox. She has many different tinctures and different things to help you with natural healing, holistic healing. And she did an excellent job with natural medicine too last night. So we're thankful and grateful for her teaching on that. And those who are coming back for class tonight, we got basic French. So we hope to see you guys there for class tonight. So we're excited, we're thankful, and we're grateful to you all. So thank you once again. We appreciate you all. Do not be hearers of this word only. Somebody's talking about they're going to study this to make sure what we're talking about is true. Well, please make sure you study everything. Be holistic, right? That's 3 hours plus of information today, right? So be holistic with it. If you study it, please make sure that you study it within what it was given. Prayerfully you will. Nevertheless, we're thankful, we're grateful. Study it. Even if you don't, study it for yourself. Bring it before Yahweh, that you might be able to be a workman or a workwoman that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Thank you so much. We appreciate you all. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ. We are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken until we have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. And we will talk to you later. We'll be on at 8 p.m. Eastern. Peace.